Your boy is back for the evening. We're gonna get back into this Dred Scott case that we was diving into pretty deep earlier. Let me go through some of these, and we're gonna get these kind of situated. But we're definitely about to. We'll do that. We'll leave that up for a second. Give people a little bit of time to come up in here. Look at this. Ooh. Can't get this to stay, but that's fine. That's why I stopped using this thing. I remember why I stopped using this little stand. But I can still make it work. Alright, there we go. There we go. Let me go down a little further. There we go. Alright, yeah, so we're gonna get into the Dred Scott case again this evening. And we're gonna watch a video about what people think about the case. I'm gonna read the newspapers about what the case was about. Kind of reiterate a few things that I said earlier today. What's going on, everybody coming in. I'm kind of gonna go over a few things that I was going over earlier today, and then we're going to really dive deep on this case. We're gonna mainly be watching a video that shows what people are talking about the case, because it's one thing to read the case and to know what it is. It's another thing to see what people have been saying about it and know the propaganda and the talking points about it today. And why is this case always still talked about? Anytime they talk about something over and over again, and it's something that could have easily just been not talked about, you got to ask questions like, why do they keep putting this in our face? What's up with the Dred Scott case? Now, some of y'all may remember the Dred Scott case. Most people don't. Most people don't know the details, and they just know a few talking points of it. I didn't even, personally, I had no clue. Once I started looking into it, I was like, yeah, I heard about the Dred Scott case, but I couldn't tell you shit about it. I didn't know, okay, what was it about? What was the main verdict in the case and all that other stuff? Well, the reason why this case was so important is, I was going to say, how come that ain't going? The reason why this case was so important is because supposedly it was a slavery decision, a decision about slavery before the Civil War that supposedly could have sparked the Civil War, according to them. And when we go looking into this, we're going to see that, if I can find it, we're going to see that these people were looking for a reason to, and we're going through records that are in the National Archives catalog. We're going to go through records that are in many different places, but mainly the National Archive records, government records, and we're looking at newspapers. So it's not like we're looking at any pseudo sources or whatever the fuck. I don't even like saying pseudo. It's the dumbest thing to say sometimes, but whatever. Everybody else is on that pseudo. If there is a thing, such a thing as pseudo. So let's start off as we're getting going. Let's go through some of these video clips. Now, we started off with some of the clips from Dr. Umar. Let's look at a couple other clips.
This 1857 Supreme Court case.
Many people sought to emancipate themselves by, fleeing across the river or the Underground Railroad in whatever facet that might have looked like, emancipating themselves. But Dred Scott and many others pursued that through legal pursuits.
Cicely Hunter is a historian in St. Louis.
He went through several court cases, which ended up coming all the way up until the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land, which ultimately determined that his fate, along with his wife's and children's, essentially they were not considered to be citizens.
So as you can see right now, they're just reading talking. They're just kind of saying talking points. Because what we're gonna be listening to, and I got a few clips, and then we're gonna go to a main video. Is you want to listen especially when you listen to these people from TV, you want to listen for talking points. What are the things everybody keeps repeating? Because, yeah, don't get me wrong, you will repeat the truth. You know, if something happens and it's the truth, you're gonna repeat it. Like you're gonna be like, hey, X, Y, and Z just happened down the street. I can't believe it. And then you might go up to somebody else after that, man. I can't believe it. X, Y, Z just happened down the street. You know, telling the truth doesn't always mean, or repeating something doesn't always mean that you're telling a talking point, but with these people, typically it does.
Therefore, they could not be emancipated.
The Scott versus
ended up coming all the way up until the Supreme Court.
Oh, the part that they're repeating right here is simple stuff. It's like, oh, well, he sued for his freedom in court. He had to go through several court systems. He went all the way up to the highest court in the land. That's the highest court in the land. You're going to hear that often. All the way up there and blah, blah. It's like there's these things they want you to know, okay?
Which is the highest court of the land, which ultimately determined that his fate, along with his wife's and children's, essentially they were not considered to be citizens. And therefore, they could not be emancipated.
The Scott versus Sanford decision sparked.
And notice, look at even how they pulled up a newspaper clip. It makes you feel like they really did research. They pulled up one newspaper clip, right? So they obviously did some research, but no. You know what I'm saying? As you can see, let's listen to what she's saying.
Court cases, which ended up coming all the way up until the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land, which ultimately determined that his fate, along with his wife's and children's, essentially they were not considered to be citizens, and therefore they could not be emancipated.
So they were saying that he was suing for his freedom, and that he, for whatever reason, can't be emancipated. Now, did this person actually read the case? Probably not, because he was not suing for his freedom. For some of us. Halito Sunshine, how you doing? Hadn't seen you in a minute. How you been? But I also ain't been on in a minute like that. So that's on me. I've been on a couple times, but not much. But yeah, so as you can see, the talking point is he's suing for his freedom. Now, we're going to get into it for those who were here earlier, but he wasn't suing for no freedom. Great, happy you back. Appreciate that. I need to get back. I've been slacking, y'all, man. Don't get me wrong. I ain't been slacking. I've been studying a lot. Like, I first studied these Chickasaw Agency Chickasaw Agency letters, and I had read like 400 letters. And then I ended up finding, I was going to make a bunch of videos, and then next thing you know, I realized that some of the letters that I was transcribing wasn't really transcribed correctly. So I got to redo this shit. I got to go through and look at the letters and make sure I'm going to tell y'all what I'm really supposed to tell y'all. Appreciate y'all loving the live. Appreciate you loving the live, Sunshine. So yeah, we're gonna get into but also I was gonna say here, I was studying that. Now I've been studying on this Dred Scott case, and they all come together, man. Like, to be honest, it's like one major thing that I've been kind of on here, and but I'm back at it. Your boy back.
The Scott versus Sanford decision sparked outrage and drove the nation closer to civil war 4 years later.
They said that it drove the nation closer to civil war 4 years later. That's a talking point. What we'll find is these same talking points. It was the highest court in the land. He sued for his freedom. An African or a slave can't be emancipated. Is not free. And this other thing they just said. It drove the nation to civil war.
Lynn Jackson is the great-great-granddaughter of Dred and Harriet Scott.
Now, she said this is Lynn Jackson, the great-great-granddaughter of Mr. Scott. Now, don't get me wrong. It could be correct. Scott could be a real person conflated with a fake story. Or Scott could be completely fake, and maybe this lady is joining in on the fakeness. I got to go look into her. Jackson, as we know, the last name Jackson. Whoops. As we know, the last name Jackson. Like I got some Jacksons on my tree, but that's just like your Michael Jacksons and the rest of the Jacksons. They literally are connected in a sense. Okay, so unless Jackson is her maiden name, is her marriage name. Then if that's her maiden name, then she comes from the same. If she's not a Jackson, she just married in. But either way, I wouldn't be surprised because I also have Scott in my line. I have Jacksons and I have Scotts, just to show y'all. And there's many people, other people that do too. So, that's to say that this, if he was connected to her, if she was connected to him, see, there's Josie Bruner Scott Rooster, even though they got it down as his first name, but it comes around here and it gets swapped to Roller Scott. And Roller Scott marries Sylvia Guy, which is should be Mary Scott Guy, and she gets married into there. But I also got, I think I got a Jackson in here. Do I got Jackson? Maybe I don't have Jackson. Maybe that's my homeboy with the Jacksons. I got Davis Butler, Scott. I thought I had a Jackson in here. Let me just double check. I know my homeboy's tree has Jacksons. But either way, we know that the Jacksons come from that line. Well, come from Indians. That's what I want to get to. So it likely, if they are connected, they are Indian. But at the same time, they're trying to get these people to classify themselves willingly as Africans in order to take them out of jurisdiction of the court. I guess I don't have no Jacksons. I guess I thought I had Jacksons. I can show you somebody that does, though. Jacksons, right? When the Jacksons go back, some of them, I guess we haven't done all on history, but you got the Jacksons. They get in with the Gibsons, and he don't have any Scots. But either way, his Jacksons and all the Jacksons would be indigenous, right? So we'll get back to this. So would they. And if she's connected to this Dred Scott, if he's real, then yeah. Now, again, we could have a fake Jackson, a fake Dred Scott, or a real Jackson, but a fake Dred Scott, and this lady is like a fraternity or a sorority lady that's tying herself to this for whatever reason. I had to go look into that. I will, but hold on. Let's keep on.
And founder of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation.
He said, "Hey, Samuel, man, I was trying to get a hold of you. Can you give me the source for the Harvard send me a DM about it."
She began
or if you just Google
fundraising.
You can send me a DM, but if you just Google 90,000 Harvard slave voyages, it should pop right up.
For the new headstone after seeing
What's up, Red Line?
just how many people wanted to visit her ancestors' grave.
The other one was so low, it was difficult to find. And yet I also wanted to be sure that we had space to inscribe on it, so that when people come really from all over the world to see his resting place, which is one of the top 3, if not the top, most requested grave sites at Calvary, there would be something to really see.
Scott's grave.
Oh, okay. Well, Google, you should just be able to Google 90,000 slave voyages. Let's just see if that'll pull it up. Yeah, 90,000 slave voyages. Well, no, wait a minute. That's not it. That's not the one. Hold up. 90,000 slave voyages, Harvard. What is that top one? So that you could just do 90,000 slave voyages, and this top one that came up actually, yeah, transatlantic slave base database right here. That whole thing right here. Yeah, just type 90,000 slave trade, and it'll come up.
Years after the Supreme Court case was decided. Pictured here is an infamous 1857 Supreme Court case.
Okay, starting over. All right, so that's one clip. As you can hear some of the talking points. Let's listen to another one.
The highly charged issue of slavery himself once and for all, rather than see Congress.
That's another talking point. They was like, hey, Tani, his name is Tani. Now, people will say Taney, because that's what it kind of looks like, but it's really pronounced Tawny. And we know Tawny means black, like Swarthy. So he really shouldn't have that name. It doesn't really make any sense. Yeah, no problem, boss man. Yeah, he really shouldn't have that name as Tawny, as he is not a tawny fellow.
Which had debated.
But the talking point here is he was trying to settle the idea of slavery once and for all, which is the whole thing of the Civil War thing.
The highly charged issue of slavery himself once and for all, rather than see Congress, which had debated the issue carefully for decades, plan out a solution. In a controversial 7-2 decision, the court decided that African Americans were not citizens.
Now, notice right here, the court decision. One thing everybody keeps doing is they keep adding on words to this phrase. Now, if the phrase is important in its verbatim status, meaning if the phrase means something every single word, then adding words or taking away words would completely change what it means, right? So it doesn't rule that African Americans were not citizens. It ruled that Africans of the African race were not citizens. So the fact that people continuously in the public view or in the news and other talking points, they keep saying African American, or sometimes they'll change this up with black, or they'll change this up with slave people are not citizens, black people are not citizens, African Americans are not citizens. What they typically don't say is just Africans are not citizens, which is the whole reason for the whole thing. Because the same reason why we're delineating today. We're not delineating, for those who know, if you've never been African, you ain't got to delineate from it. You already, as a kid, you be saying all the time, you only delineate from something you used to be, something that's really in your line. And if it ain't in your line, why are you delineating from it, taking it out of your line? That makes sense. My bad, I'm trying to plug in my phone. Well, let's keep going.
Therefore, they did not have the right to sue in court. Writing the decision.
Therefore, they didn't have the right to sue in court. So let's look at the actual phrase of what it really says. I'm gonna have to do it this way. Let's look at the actual phrase of what it really says, so that way those of y'all who hadn't seen it, most of y'all probably have, since y'all been on some of these with me. We may not get a lot of people in the live stream today. Saturday nights, it'd be so many live streams going on. I don't expect to get a lot of people, but and people be going out, people be kicking it. Where is it at? Right here. So in both spots, you'll see it right here. Even right here, it says a free Negro. Now, if it just would have stopped there and said a free Negro whose ancestors were brought to this country and sold as slaves, even that still is iffy with people like us, because our ancestors weren't brought to this country. Our ancestors were already in this country, not naturalized. We are Indians. Our ancestors, we are the Negroes who were not brought to this country. But notice it says the Negroes of the African race. So it's even more specific. It didn't say a free Negro that's just on the land, period. It's up to you to know what a Negro is and know that Negro doesn't mean just one person, one type of person. And even then, if you thought it meant one type of person, they specified the specific Negro they're speaking about. But if you read the phrase in your own mind, thinking that Negro just meant one person, or thinking that there's just one type of Negro, then you would be confused as well. Because Negro just meant a black adjective to describe a certain type of people of any race, of any type of race, multiple Negro races, right? Whatever. So it says that here, that the United States sold its slaves, they're not a citizen within the meaning of the Constitution. Now, even down here below, too, it says the plaintiff having admitted, the plaintiff having admitted that his ancestors were imported from Africa and sold as slaves, he is not a citizen. Okay? If you admit it, again, we're looking at the wording, not the plaintiff being an African. In fact, he just had to admit that he was an African. So what I'm getting to is nothing says African American. They talk about a specific type of Negro, but that's the point I'm getting to with what you see in the newspapers. And here, when everybody keeps changing this to African American, that is how they fuck with, that's how they get you. And that's how they started saying, hey, we want these American Indian Negroes to start thinking that they are African Negroes. Okay? That's basically what they're doing. And in order to get them to think that they're African Negroes, we're going to change all these definitions with all this other stuff. And then we're also, on top of that, we're going to come up with court cases. My bad, I'm trying to plug this in. Come up with court cases that we can fall back on. Come up on court cases that we can fall back on in order to do that. But play with the wording. In the court cases, we have to be specific. We're going to say that Africans can't be citizens, but we know we're going to call these people Africans. So as we go out into the public, we're going to say a black person can't be a citizen. And then an enslaved person, things of that nature. Let's keep going.
Have the right to sue in court. Writing the decision for the court, Taney incorrectly and stubbornly claimed.
Notice here he pronounced the name wrong. He said Taney. It's Tawny. So even some of these people, but that's a minor thing. But okay.
Taney incorrectly and stubbornly claimed that the founders believed that African Americans had no rights,
Now notice how he said that African Americans had no right. Notice how he put that in quotations. Probably because that wasn't the phrase in there, meaning he added that in. But am I supposed to believe a guy that can't even get the name right? Like, look, even I looked into this and I noticed the name and I noticed the real spelling of the name, the pronunciation. Now, don't get me wrong, small technicalities like that aren't that important, but when these people are putting out such propaganda and they're being paid to put this out, it's very important. If somebody's paying you to study this case and you can't even get the nigga name right, okay, let's keep going.
White man was bound to respect. He ruled that Congress did not have the constitutional authority to ban slavery from the states, and therefore the Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional. Taney decided this despite Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, which reads, Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. Because of the Due Process Clause, Taney wrote, slaveholders could take their property wherever they want. The highly charged issue of slavery
All right. So he was ruling talking about slavery. Slave owners could take their property wherever they want to. But again, this case was not about his so-called freedom. Let's see. Now we're going to get into this video because, and this is a pretty decently long video. We'll kind of go through it, try to skim through it. But, we're going to really break down these people's talking points.
They also declared unconstitutional the Missouri Compromise, which limited the spread of slavery to new territory. Just the fugitive.
It's not really a video. It's more like whatever. But we're going to try to go through some of the talking points. It's too long to just be looking at a damn, they faces. But we'll listen to a little bit of it. And that's my bad. I was supposed to listen to it earlier. And try to listen to it again earlier. And try to give y'all some, and try to take down some whatever. We'll try to go through it and see if it can quickly get to some talking points. If it takes too long in the lag, I'll probably just go back to my sources, and we'll just go through it through sources. But I wanted to kind of incorporate what some of these people were saying. Now, let me see this. Let me see this has video.
To ban slavery in the federal.
No, this doesn't have it. Now, one thing is crazy.
Saying that
is the amount of talking points and propaganda that these people kind of usher in this. My bad, y'all. Some of the talking points, like this one lady tries to say, and I wish I knew my bad. I wish I knew the exact one, but there's a point on here where there's this YT lady, and she's acting like, let me see if I can just find it, man, because it's so insane.
And they announced this before the case was heard?
Prior to...
Let me see.
Last month.
History.
And he actually bought Let's watch.
Because this case says, don't try the policy.
Telegraph quite clearly to the court what's on his mind and what he's prepared to do if the court begin to turn its views to support his policy shift. Yeah, thank you.
So I have two quick questions.
Hold on.
Is its own dramatic scene.
And here's something we would find absolutely outrageous today. I read that for his swearing in, he wanted to announce the outcome of the case for his inaugural address.
Yeah, he's deeply invested in this question about Congress's authority and the question about to what degree and under what terms slavery will or will not be able to continue and to spread into federal territories.
Hold on.
The thing that's going on behind the scenes is that President Buchanan
did Missouri allow
that they would have
the entire review by the Supreme Court?
Absolutely. And here, the specific question is whether, for the purposes of diversity jurisdiction in a federal court, right? Diversity
that.
Hold on, y'all. This is her.
Period. Not only to impact the jurisprudence, but
an editor of an abolitionist newspaper.
So was he paid for his services, or did they do this pro bono?
Blair is not paid, and
so like.
Know what kind of court was receiving the case of
trials in that federal district court, and so he is, on the one hand, still enmeshed in this world of Baltimore, in this.
About
it's this lady right here.
Was serving here, director forward. So I think to understand Tawny, you have to understand the world.
So she's talking about Tawny right there. Notice the name Tawny.
Our landmark cases, knowing that we couldn't do all, but
a couple years before
on the road in insane.
Goodness.
The Scots keep the girls in hiding.
Okay, here we go. Hold on, let's listen to this.
And let Mark did the arrangement, and so there was
go on to the Missouri Supreme Court.
Well, I think that takes us back to a fundamental question, which is why 1846? What's happening that the Scots wait as long as they do to bring this freedom suit? And I think there is this confluence of things, but for me, the most powerful thing are those girls. Part of what we know is that
the girls. Now, so we're gonna listen to this part. But I want to preface this for you real quick. His girls. What happened to the girls? What was the plea about his children? Now remember, his children. Well, we'll get to that. But those who saw earlier, his children were known as his servants that he lost wages on of great value, as we see here. Now, what was his What did Dred Scott allege that the defendant did to his children? It says here that the first day or whatever with force of arms at St. Louis aforesaid made an assault on Eliza Scott and Lizzie Scott, then and still infant daughters and servants of the plaintiff, which they were infant daughters, but he's still charging their asses as if they was his servants. Basically, you gotta think about it. This YT man basically assaulted this black man and his family and put them in the prison for hours, for 6 hours. Not that they were slaves. They were only held for a maximum of 6 hours together by this YT dude, okay? They were never enslaved. They only held them as slaves or imprisoned them, which I'll show you where they say imprisoned them, or it says right here, imprisoned and held as slaves, Eliza and Lizzie, for a long space of time, to which 6 hours. And then and there threatened to beat and said Lizzie and Eliza and hold them as slaves. He was basically like trying to kidnap them and enslave them. Good evening. What's up, on Code? Good to see you. Yeah, he was trying to enslave them, right? Now, they were infant daughters at the time. This is the only information I really find about these so-called daughters, okay? And why am I saying that? Is because this lady is going to go, we're about to listen to what this lady say. She's about to go into this whole diatribe about who these little girls are and what Dred Scott and his wife thinks about, you know, their children and what they're afraid of that's gonna happen and all this other stuff. And my thing is, where the hell did you read this shit? Okay, that's my thing. Where the hell did you read it? Because let me just show you this real quick. If you go to the newspapers, in the U.S. and we type in Dred Scott, and you would think the first time you would hear about a case like this would likely be in the newspapers, not in a book back then, not anywhere else besides maybe case law before it gets to the newspapers. You got to think about the term of events. Think about the term of events, and let me put this to where it goes together. The term of events, a man has something happen to him, whether he was enslaved or not, whatever the case may be. He has something happen to him. 1846, let's see. 18. Okay, yeah, so think about it. And that ain't even him. So something happens to a man. The first thing that man, first of all, where are you going to read about it? You're not going to read about it. His man's not going to write it in his book unless he wrote it in a diary or something. Went home that night crying, writing in a diary. Then you won't know what the hell happened until he does either one of two things. Either he goes to the courts and all of a sudden that case in particular starts getting written on public documents, and now those public documents can be read at a later time. Or it's in the newspapers about him and about what happened. And you're reading about it in the newspapers. I'm just showing you there's only one or two places we can really look for this. It's going to be the court records. And it has to come from at the time. It's going to be the court records of the newspaper. And it has to come from at the time because apparently Dred Scott unalives about 1 year after the whole litigation. So it ain't like you can get primary information from the newspapers later about the dude. He's unalive unless they're talking to his wife or something like that. But I want you to notice 1847, and that wasn't even it. So these ain't even that. That says Dred Scott but that's the word 100 in Scott. So you don't really Dred Scott. You don't really get the first thing in the newspapers until about 1848. The case was in 1857. And even here, this ain't even Proceedings of the Supreme Court, Emerson versus Dred Scott. So you do see where they were in the courts before, but this is basic information. This is like the first thing you see. Oh, here's a Supreme Court case. And one thing too, I will say, This case is supposed to have said to go through the other courts before it reached the Supreme Court. So I should find, something somewhere of Dred Scott in the case in the newspapers from other court decisions before it gets to the Supreme Court, but I don't see that. You see, as I've typed in Dred Scott, the fourth one down or so that actually has the word Dred Scott in it, which is the first one, is already in the Supreme Court. And the reason why I'm saying that is because these people have a talking point. Their talking point is, well, he had to keep fighting over and over again. And he went to every court system until he went to the highest court in the land. Let's listen. We actually just heard that dumb lady just say that. Hold on. Or I should say she's one of us, I guess. So I'll say that brainwashed lady. I'm sorry. Let's see what she said. Let's hear her say it again.
That through legal pursuits.
Cicely Hunter is a historian in St. Louis.
He went through several court cases, which ended up coming all the way up until the Supreme Court.
He went through several court cases, which ended up coming all the way up to the Supreme Court. But how come I just see it starting at the Supreme Court in 1848? That's pretty damn funny. A little bit of lies, right? When they say these stories are made up, this could be a real case where Dred Scott, a real person, did go sue a particular person because he was assaulted. Could be a real case. But now the thing I will say is they talking about this case says Emerson, but he's suing Sanford. Now they're trying to say, we'll get into that, but they're trying to say that Emerson sold him to Sanford, but Dred Scott never said he was a slave to anybody. In his case, he never said he was a slave, which means he never said he was suing for his freedom. Because the thing is they're saying he's suing for his freedom. But if he never said he was a slave and he never asked to be free in the case, how is he suing for his freedom? That doesn't make any sense. If the man himself that actually brought the case, and it's not that he's defending himself against some accusations from the state or something. He's the one that brought the case up. He's the one that went and sued the YT dude. So how if the dude that came, who's the plaintiff, who brought the whole case to order with his attorneys, isn't saying anything about being a slave or being sold, where does that come into play? That's the thing you got to think about. And for those who missed it, I also found it in the newspapers earlier where it says, the plea does not show Dred Scott to be a slave. The plea, Dred Scott, nothing shows him being a slave. It does not follow the man whose ancestors were slaves. It does not follow a man is not free whose ancestors were slaves. That's just going to the next thing. But main thing to take out of that from what we're talking about right now is the fact that, hey, the plea itself does not show that Dred Scott was a slave. So why does this even get brought into that? Okay, well, let's get back to this, but let's get back to the daughters, because this lady is going to go into some craziness. So the main thing I want you to take away from this before we get back to this lady is the fact that this lady can only read what I've been reading likely. Unless you read things that happened well after the case, they came out well after the case, because there were documents and newspapers of things coming out well after the case, even 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, still now. But so a lot of these people will be reaching back to current modern day propaganda and never go all the way back to the actual dates of what happened to tell you what happened. So let's just listen.
We have these two young daughters. Something changes. And throughout this litigation, the Scotts keep the girls in hiding. My sense always is that. So think about this, y'all. This nigga Dred Scott sued old boy for him being in prison and assaulted for 6 hours, okay? What do you mean he had his children in hiding? Like, who was he hiding his children from? Right here. His children and servants right here, just so that people see the beginning.
Lizzie, the infant daughters, plaintiff in prison, they said, here we go, let's start up here. The plaintiff lost and was deprived of society, comfort, of assistance of his wife, and thereby gains. They talk about first his wife, and come down here. Because there's 3 separate charges. One charge for his wife, one charge for him assaulting him, and also a charge for him assaulting his little girls. And it says, and there did against the peace of the planet, whatever I said, and also for the defendant herewith, first day, whatever, with force of arms, talking about the defendant, the YT dude, with force of arms at St. Louis, aforesaid, made an assault on Eliza Scott and Lizzie Scott, then and still infant daughters and servants of the plaintiff, and then and there imprisoned and held as slaves, said Eliza and Lizzie, for a long space of time, to with 6 hours, and then and there did threaten to beat, said Eliza and Lizzie, and to hold them as slaves and restrain them of their liberty. He was threatening to make them slaves. So that by means of promises, said Eliza and Lizzie, were put into great fear and did not attend the plaintiff's business. Otherwise, whatever. So he's suing for lost wages, even for his infant daughters, not whatever. Now this is a lawyer who drew this up. The lawyer is suing for the lost wages. They're the ones that probably said, hey, the dude did this to you and held you, we're going to get him for wages. Even though your kids is infants, we still going to get him for the wages, right? So, but that's what's in here. They're infant daughters. I want you to take away from that. They're infant daughters who were only held for 6 hours at the same time with Dred Scott. They were all held together for 6 hours. I don't know how they got out of this in 6 hours, but they were almost kidnapped and everything else, right? So let's listen to what she comes up with.
They are prepared, if necessary, to defy a court order and to secret those girls out of St. Louis rather than to see them remain enslaved, rather than to see them at risk for being sold away from.
They are prepared to keep their children in hiding and to go against a court order. Okay, if they need to get their children up out of here rather than be enslaved again. Okay, let's keep going. These people are crazy.
Their parents, they're terribly vulnerable as they grow up as young African-American enslaved girls.
They're terribly vulnerable as they grow up, these young African-American girls. I had to throw in the African, because I gotta make sure you niggas know you African in this bitch. Gotta throw it in there, right? That ain't what the case is, right? But also she's adding a lot of fluff. What do you mean about these vulnerable infant girls that was held for 6 hours? Yeah, that's vulnerable, but you kind of giving us some extras. But let's keep going because it gets way worse. Way worse.
They were vulnerable not only to being separated from their parents, but to sexual assault. So
they were vulnerable not only from being sold from their parents, but for sexual assault. What's up, Bridget? Just making it up as they go. Exactly. What up, Chief EJ Smoker? Just and think about this. Don't y'all know they always gotta put a RAPE story in there? This is why we've been yelling at these fools forever. Stop listening to the RAP bullshit. Not to say that some people possibly didn't get that happen, made that happen, right? We went over how some people said they be lying exactly. Some people be like the whole, actually, from what Bridget, like the whole thing where the Arkansas people, a lot of white T folks, had one child as a so-called slave. Now, that's if those people were white T, but according to them, I think it was supposed to be free white persons that had one slave that might have been a child that was 9 years old. Now we're looking at some, possible, craziness. But for the most part, you can't blanket that for every story. And I just want people to see that that's typically the whole propaganda. Everybody's getting raped. Even when we was talking about the whole thing, when I was going over the whole story that I was showing y'all.
Welcome to American
from
Ancestry.
My page last time about the richest woman in the world. they had to throw in a RAP story. Everybody has to throw in a RAPE story. And the reason why I'm harping on this is because why did she throw that in there? That had nothing to do with the case. He only held them for 6 hours. So now you can say, you can possibly try to say he was afraid, they was afraid of that. But Dred Scott was with his daughters at the same time and the wife. So what I envision is I see them holding their kids, being assaulted by this YT dude. He done stuffed them somewhere real quick. And they got up out of it. However they got up out of it. And they got some attorneys and said, nigga, you ain't about to get away with this, nigga. I'm about to sue your bitch ass. and obviously it wasn't as bad. Well, it was decently bad because they said it was at threat of arms. So he must have had a firearm with him. And on top of that, you know, kind of scared him, which that would scare you. You know what I'm saying? Dude come up to you with a firearm and tell you to stop, get in here or whatever. And I don't know how they got out of it because, of course, that's not going to be in the case. I say, of course, you would think that would be in the case. But that's not in the case. I was trying to show you a picture of that lady. And really listen to a little quick excerpt. Oh, here it is. The richest woman in the world. Amanda Eubanks. That whole story. And they had to throw in a whole grape thing in there. Like. All right. So according to them, this is Mr. Well. Okay, y'all. This is. You know what? I don't even want to find it. Let's think. I'm going to get way too far off. But Amanda Eubanks, all these stories have graping in it. But let's keep listening to this crazy YT lady. Because the main thing I was telling y'all in the beginning, where are you reading this? Where in the hell did you read this, lady? That's how y'all said, like y'all said, they make it up as they go along. Well, tell me about what do you think about those daughters? Well, if I was to imagine myself, the daughters, I would suppose that they were vulnerable little African-American daughters. They were susceptible to lots of possible rapings and lots of whippings, if I was to think about what I think about slavery. And they were just scared. They got the scraps from the table. They were sickly little things that, you know, that's just what they do. Stop listening to it. Okay, let me get on.
There's something going on here in this scene. What happens is that
let's go back.
They remain enslaved rather than to see them at risk for being
remain enslaved, but they was only enslaved for 6 hours. Okay.
Sold away from their parents. They're terribly vulnerable as they grow up as young African-American enslaved girls. They're vulnerable not only to being separated from their parents, but to sexual assault. So there's something going on here in this scene. What happens is that they win at the second trial.
They are, right?
Of white men in St. Louis, Missouri, find them, declare them free people. And it's extraordinary, but not unexpected.
Not unexpected at all.
This sort of case has been heard, as Chris said, hundreds of times before. And generally, the rule of law in Missouri is that once an enslaved person has lived on free soil, that he or she becomes a free person, even when they return to the slave state of Missouri.
Once free.
And you know what I said? And you read, yeah, they always putting that emphasis. They continuously keep putting the emphasis on that. And I was about to say, I think that's a black lady, but that don't even look like a black lady. Now look at it. It looks like a white tea lady with a little bit of melanin in her skin. Makes me wonder, what the hell is that lady? You know what I'm saying? These people be so weird looking, dude.
Was free.
Yes.
So then why did it not end there?
Right. So it's a great lesson in why people wait to bring freedom suits. Why? Because they're not a sure thing. They never are. But in this case, we have changing politics in the state of Missouri.
They said it makes you wonder why people would wait so late to bring a freedom suit. He didn't bring a freedom suit. The words freedom, free, or anything was never said anywhere in his plea.
A high court that is increasingly interested in closing the door to these sorts of freedom suits. And what we get finally at the High Court in Missouri is...
That's another one of those talking points. They were trying their best to come up with a solidified solution on these talking points about the slavery and the black men people in the at that time. And that's important because that was 1857 at the end of the case. And then right after this case law, basically, because you need some case law to make something law. You need, or in certain law courts, besides the constitutional law, in civil law, I believe it is, I think it's civil law. No, common law. Common law is built upon prior cases and can set precedent. So prior cases set precedent in order for future cases, right? So that's common law. Then you got another one called like judicial law or whatever, and that's kind of like more of a proactive law. Like, it's not looking at old laws to see if this is against the law. It's coming up with a new law because new things happen. Like, let's say, like the internet. So people going at each other on the internet bullying, right? There was no case law maybe prior to them coming out with some type of law or statute or code. Actually, they would call them statutes and codes that would stop those kind of things from happening. So they would come up with a statute or act or a law or a code or whatever in order to have something on the books to prevent it happening in the future. But back then, and still even now sometimes, they was using law of precedent, law of the past. So if you want to base new legislation too, but new documents, treaties, agreements, contracts, whatever, based on certain law that is already existing on the books, well, you need a law, or you need a case, I should say. You need to have a case go through in order to have something solidified. So when they make this case and keep harping on these people being, the case itself says an African of a Negro of the African race can't be a citizen. That's what they needed wording wise in a case. After that, they confuse you and call you all Africans and all Negro Africans, confuse you with the whole reclassification where you're just a Negro, which is an African. We'll change the definitions they change the definitions in the dictionaries. Look, when I do a documentary about this, because I got to do this, and I know y'all probably like, nigga, you ain't gonna never do a documentary. I'm gonna do some. It's 2026 is documentary year, I promise. But what was I saying? Case. So you need those. So what you have is this case that goes out there, and notice everybody saying that it's not that I'm just saying this. It's like their talking points that says this, and in the newspaper they keep saying, everybody keeps saying we need an answer to this slavery question. We was pressing the courts. We need an answer to this slavery question. In the newspaper, hey man, can we get an answer about this slavery question? And the other talking point is, hey man, the answer to this slavery question almost started the Civil War, y'all. Hey man, this whole case damn near started the Civil War over and over and over again. The same war that's also the war that kind of instituted the treaties that started calling everybody Africans. Around the same time, if you look in the dictionaries prior to 1860s and after the 1860s, you will notice a lot of the wordings around African, Negro, Black, and all of that completely changed. Now the words Black includes any races from Africa, when prior to 1860, it was just saying it was just an adjective for a fucking color. When you look at citizen, the word meaning of citizen changed. It just meant a free inhabitant prior, but now it means an inhabitant of a municipality that's governed by some people. Excuse me. That's what it means now. If you look at, when we looked at the meaning of all these other meanings, without going, we're going to get back into this, you're going to start to see the change up. And I believe this is the pivotal ass legislation case that first set into motion the legal way to separate Black people from their tribes for good, period. Now, technically, many of them were already still set up as citizens. By 1860, many of us had been reclassified to citizens under treaties. And in fact, it's not that I just say that. Even during the Dred Scott case in the newspapers, this same thing says, hey, We've made citizens of all kind of people before. Under the treaty with Mexico, we made citizens of all combinations of colors. The same was done in the cases of Louisiana and Florida. What? The same? Meaning of all kind of colors? There was treaties of people that y'all made citizens? Yes, no one ever doubted nor the court that the inhabitants who were of all colors through treaties did not become citizens under the treaties. Okay, they have become citizens without being naturalized. How can you become a citizen without being naturalized? That means you must have been there already, and your people's people must have been there already. Okay, that's the amazing part about that. But okay, let's go back to this, because as I go through and dismantle the hell out of these folks, we get to find new things that actually help us even more so prove other talking points that we got through, like the treaties and shit like that. But let's keep going.
Is a split decision. On the one hand,
You said you're going to upload this on Little Two? Yeah, man. I need to get on that, man, because the last 4 or 5 of them I haven't uploaded. And people, I know people would be like, people would probably be like, damn, man, out of nowhere, I'll drop like 5 videos out of nowhere, and they be like hours long. I be done drop 24 hours worth of videos. They retroactively, in the case, changed the meanings to help fit the out of Africa theory. Yeah, exactly. So they knew that they was gonna, and to be honest, I don't even know if they was making this shit up as they went along. The out of Africa theory still wasn't even out by now. So 1860, your out of Africa theory really doesn't, to be honest, I got a video where even in 1900, let me see if I can find it for you. Well, in 1900, they still wasn't even talking about out of Africa. So you also got to think about it. This has been a progression. I'm glad you said that. This has been a progression of propaganda. They didn't even while they were trying to make us Africans, they still didn't know how can they really solidify that. They didn't know that, okay, if we make everybody believe they came from Africa because that's the biggest black planet, so-called continent, that'll also help. That's what's so funny about it. And I didn't even think about that, but that's what's so funny about it. Let me see if I can find that clip real quick. Because it's just like, dude, like, yeah, and you got to think about it. They didn't even find the bones. The dude that made the so-called found the bones, the oldest bones in Africa, that shit didn't even happen till damn near 1980. Okay, so the out of Africa theory still wasn't even prominent into the motherfucking school system until maybe the early, and really probably mid-90s, not even early. Because I'm about to show you a video, if I can find it, from the early 1900s. But I think it might have been maybe mid 1900s where they maybe start discussing it, and I think then they start thinking in their head like, well, we got to start thinking that you can't just tell them that, you got to tell them something, because all black people must come from the same black source, because they obviously didn't come from these white T folks. I don't know what was they thinking about it. I mean, I know, basically, just to get us in the capacity of thinking that we African. But yeah, that wasn't even the case. Let me see if I can find it, though. I don't have a ton of videos, so I may find it. Although I think I'm way too far back right now. Yeah, way too far back. Hold on. And I'm wondering if it's on my phone. Or I'm also wondering if I even screenshot it. Back in the day when I used to do videos, do content, sometimes I would find something that was like so dope. And then like right then and there, I would like, I may have to look on my TikTok. I would record it from my phone, pointing at my iPad or pointing at it, and that wasn't good because then I didn't have a source saved, and I hate that I did that. And I know where I found it. It's in the archives. Internet Archive is just that I'm in my head this whole time while I'm doing this. I've been trying to think of what the hell did I type in to bring that shit up. And I cannot, right now in my head, I cannot think of that shit. Okay, let's go to my TikTok real quick. Because I really would like to show that to y'all. It ain't gonna be like recent, that's for damn sure. And I used to tell, see, man, it's like, you know, I'm so good at doing a lot of shit, man, and I just be lazying it up sometimes, man. Like, I could label all my videos with a little label on it and with a wording so that way I know how to find it easy and stuff. And I told that shit to myself back in the day, but as soon as I get done with the video, I'm like, fuck it, upload. Here we go. See, it's exactly what I said. Now, there's the name Rebuilding Indian Country. See, I wouldn't have even remembered that. That's the reason why I'm glad I didn't go looking on that. I would have typed in like history, whatever the fuck. But see how I was pointing this at the screen? Now I don't have the source. I'm gonna have to go back through and re-record the source. But listen to this. This is 1933. Okay, 1933. 1857, they're taking us out of our capacity as Africans. But 1933, they still ain't really got this whole out of Africa theory going. What?
Questions how and why. Archaeological and anthropological studies have pretty well established the original seat of human habitation as somewhere in southern Asia.
They said that life started in southern Asia. Now, you know what's funny about this part right here? Like because this is also what was taught in the school books, and I think I may show it here as well. And you know what? I'll play this. But what's funny about this area, other than the fact that that's the Middle East, other than the fact that that's, you know, where the Arabs, whatever are, right? That's the Caucasus Mountains, nigga. When you go look up where the Caucasus Mountains is, it's right here. I said, these niggas ain't slick. These niggas for a while said life started basically where the Caucasians came from. Okay, but let's keep going.
America's first inhabitants trekked east and north as the ice cap proceeded to cross from the old world to the new in the Bering Straits area. Then down through North America, into Central America, and perhaps even farther south.
You said you was reading the Florida census 1880, 1910. They admit most Negroes in color were native born. I would love to see that because I have that slave population schedule talks about that one that goes from 1790 to 1850, and it talks about most of us being native born too.
Back to scatter widely through what is now the United States. There's a definite series of links between these.
But hold on.
So-called American Indian. It answers the questions how and why. Archaeological and anthropological studies.
So now there's a couple of things to take away from this. One, they say life started in the Caucasus Mountains, which is funny, right? Two, they say it goes from there to Asia and then walks over to Bering Strait and all that, right? Which means they never touched black people. And I think that's why they knew they had to change this up. A couple of things we're going to get out of this. One, that's why they knew they had to change this story up, because if you started right here like you've always been and you've been talking about going this way, they was like, well, you know what? We came up with this story, but they never really touched black folks. So how are we going to explain that these black folks were the first ones here? Because they're going to eventually understand when they start having sex even more and start making babies and find out that our babies turn into them, in a sense, and their babies never turn into us, in a sense, right? Unless you're African. But then they're going to start asking questions. So they had to bring that dot down here first, then make it act like it, because later on they'll say, oh, well, it actually started down here in Ethiopia. We forgot about that part. And then it went to the Middle East, and then they made their way out there, right? That's really where, so they've been evolving this story. Appreciate that. I just seen you say you'll send it to me. they've been evolving. Yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah, they've been evolving this story since they've been trying to come up with it. Let's just play this a little bit of the way through. Oh, another thing to get out of this is if they believe they still came from these Caucasus Mountains, I still believe that this part of Europe was populated by our people, right? As we know. And when we look at what they say, the history of what happened, how do YTs take over Europe? At some point, these fools end up in Germany and take over the folks in Germany first, as some likely first. And they become the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes. Now, Angles and Saxons were black before, and we can prove that. We ain't gonna get into all that. It's like, man, I'm gonna have to make, like, literally, man, I'm gonna have to just. My whole like series of documentaries for 2026, man, is gonna completely reconstruct the fuck out of history, with super sources and so many different things. It's gonna be so much stuff to read. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, not read, but to watch, man. It's gonna be crazy. But my videos where I talk about how the YT folks come up here, become Anglo-Saxons and Jews, take them over first, and then they start going from there into each country. They start taking over each country and becoming those people, assuming those people. They'll come over, take over the Moors in Europe or in France and become the French. Come over, take over the Spaniards in Spain and become Spanish. And we're going to the whole ish thing. Take over the Poles and become Polish. Take over the Finns, become Finnish. Take over the Danes and become Danish. Over and over again, right? Until all of Europe is eventually taken over, and then eventually they start making their way that way. So it's like you can really tell their story even through the shit they did talk about. Now, the funny thing about them saying they start right here is, I don't know. I'm starting to, like, some of us, like me, believe that the Africans made these motherfuckers, either through both becoming albinos, making albinos through breeding with their family members, right? And then eventually doing things to them. And I think that they not expelled or pushed a lot of them into this region at some point. And then these fools been moving around and whatever. Since then, like, I believe that's kind of what happened. Because why is the Caucasus Mountains so damn close to goddamn Africa? You know what I'm saying? And they been talking about they come from there. Let me keep going. Oh, shit. You say, yes, sir, they've been doing this since they invaded as Indo-Europeans. That's what I'm talking about. And you know what? Indo-Europeans. I've heard that term, but you got me wondering, what does that term mean? Indo. Like Indonesia, Indo something, Indo. But I'm going to have to look that up. Because I forgot what that meant. But yeah, no, that's for real. What up, Felonius?
Habitation is somewhere in southern Asia. North America's first inhabitants trekked east and north as the ice cap proceeded to cross from the old world to the new in the Bering Straits area. Then down through North America, into Central America, and perhaps even farther south, before turning back to scatter widely through what is now the United States. There's a definite series of links between these earliest inhabitants and the people Columbus found when he discovered America. Radiation to the west from the same point of beginning was probably responsible for the civilization of the European countries.
So first of all, you got to think, this is where they're talking about the original people of the world started in 1933. This is from the Department of the Interior, the BIA, I believe. No, it's different from the BIA, but the Department of the Interior. Okay? So this is where they say. Now, notice. At that time, I didn't know, but no, the Department of the Interior is the BIA, which is also the War Department. And then they said they went their way. Notice they never even spoke about Africa in 1933. Talking about being some of the first people to be here. So it just made me want to Google, like, here it is. It says, the Outer Africa theory suggesting modern humans evolved. I'm glad I played this one. I'm going to just let this one play. So this one shows us for real. In Africa and then migrated out to populate the rest of the world, gained significant traction in the late 1980s, particularly with the advancement of mitochondrial DNA. Now, when you look at the sources that it talks about, for one, it tells you there was a debate about it, you know, from people who had a multi-regional model of how the world was populated, which is really what I believe. But I ain't really looked into all the details. I've really looked into more so other stuff, other ideas. But then you also see, like they said, it's just the reason why they're giving it this seat of Africa is like the pinnacle of where everybody came from is from some DNA. Mitochondrial DNA revealed that most recent common ancestors of all modern humans lived in Africa. I have to go read even more into this, but I'm gonna tell you like this: you got people like this guy right here, you know, who found the skull. And don't get me wrong, finding skulls is cool, you know what I'm saying? And they studying these skulls that they find. They didn't find that little Australopithecus bullshit ass skull till around the 1980s, okay? These people have been playing games. They hella late with their propaganda. But there's a lot of skulls that they found back in the day that they ain't been showing us. They, you know, it's just a skull. Skulls. And let me just say this too. Like when I showed that earlier about that video in 1933, they said that this is the not out of Africa theory or something else. This is why we say, and I think I might show it in here where the year I pulled up school books. The school books had the same shit. School textbooks from 1900s and late 1800s wasn't talking about no out of Africa. So my thing is, this is why your grandparents say, I ain't never been taught nothing about no Africa. And even some of your parents will say, I still wasn't taught nothing about no Africa. Nigga, 1980s is when this came out. Nigga, I was born in 1983. Okay? It came out when I was around the time I was born. I would have been the one taught this, because he just comes out and finds this shit, and then they got to incorporate this shit into the school books, right? So that it doesn't really get into the school books until I'm in school. So people I'm 42, people who are in their 40s and 30s, we some of the first ones that had to listen to this. And I'm so glad we are the same ones busting the bullshit up. Okay, let's keep going. Everywhere. You know, let's say, for instance, like here in America, this is archival footage from like the early 1930s, maybe. And back then in the books, in the school textbooks, they talked a lot about Indian burial mounds. They were showing videos from Indian burial mounds. They were talking a lot. And so it wasn't an out of Africa theory. Multiple places were talked about. Egypt was still talked about as being an old society. That started being talked about at some point, but it didn't say that life started in Egypt. They just talked about Egypt having some artifacts and stuff like that. They started bringing in the fake Egypt stuff somewhat in the early 1900s, but in many cases, it still didn't talk about Africa like that. But they did talk about Indian burial mounds. Now, what you will find is they stopped talking about Indian burial mounds at some point in the school curriculum, and then they definitely talk more about Africa and everything else later on. So, some of the first, I never believed that BS. Exactly, my mom is a baby boomer, 1964. She always told us we're not African. Exactly, because they didn't go through these things. And so it's like, why would they even think it? They didn't even have the idea. So that means, you got to think about it too. That means that if we knew we were African and this was supposedly passed down in slavery from 1860, nobody literally has a memory of it at all. Literally zero people, except for those who were born in the last 40 years that got that shit from school. Everybody else so how can something be so documented, so true? Man, everybody was talking about the slave trade and blah blah blah, 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 blah. But nobody can say shit about it, can find it being much of a talking point until the late 1900s. This shit is so crazy. And you're gonna see them. This is what they found in Mound Park, in Indian mounds, right? First they're showing a little bit of pottery or whatever, but then they're gonna start showing. Looks like I was kind of trying to find my damn spot. Hold on, let me move it forward. I guess I can't do it, so I'll just talk through it. But as you can see, that's where they were at. And exactly from what Uncle said. So think about that too. the biggest, most documented thing in history of the slave trade we can't find shit about are people talking about ever coming from it. But everybody can find their folks talking about being Indians. But that was just some lies. Y'all was just trying to escape slavery and lying about who you was, and y'all just been passing down lies forever. So we can pass down lies forever, but we can't pass down a zero bit of the so-called truth of a slave trade. People are crazy.
It was like Illinois, I think it was, and they're were there in Cahokia Mounds, I believe, or Mound Park, one of them, and they're getting all these things. So it's like, okay, y'all found some skulls long ago, so are you all gonna test what you found back then and use that mitochondrial DNA mumbo jumbo on what you find here, or you just picking and choosing? As you see, they're out there in Mound Park, and I think this is Illinois, just, putting them in bags, getting them ready, you know what I mean? See what I'm saying? It was all over the place, you know what I mean? So it's not like they couldn't give us the same kind of study, and there's still a lot of this out there today. As you can see, there's even more of them out there going through them, okay? And I can show where they're filing these things into file cabinets. That's going to come up too. So that means that's going to show you that this information is still there. The 1930s, what you thought about in the 1950s, what you thought about in the 1970s. It's the 1980s where he says, hey, by the 1980s, new discoveries and dating techniques and blah, 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 and we give the African origins. But as he gives names, there were people who were multi-regionalists, as it said in that article.
So right here, just to read this article real quick, he said all of our grandparents met up and said this what we say exactly. All over the country, all over the damn continent. Without internet, without telephone, without, technology at all, you know what I'm saying? And think about it too. That would be the best, which it really is. It really is some of the oldest and best oral history probably that's out there, y'all. Now that I think about it, like, we literally have been keeping our oral history of who we are, where we come from, somewhat what we do. And a lot of our practices are still old ancient practices. When you go look it up in these books, when you go look it up in all these other things, you got all these old ancient practices that we've been doing. We've lost some of what the information and what of us, but we still holding on to that shit, man. And I'm so proud of my people, man. That's why I've always loved my people. That's why I've always been into my people only. And I knew we were always special, no matter what they've tried to put on us, whatever, no matter what kind of propaganda they threw and said how we was and we was this, criminals, slaves, blah, 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 Africans, whatever. I've always been like, but yeah, I love my people. Y'all hood, y'all ratchet, y'all fighting, y'all shooting. You can't go nowhere without somebody always getting out alive. But I still like kicking it with my folks. It's like, I don't know what's wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with y'all. I love my folks. I love going to my clubs where niggas might get a little mad sometimes. Y'all get mad at y'all clubs too? Don't quit lying. Said they met up in the woods, squared up deep on the line. Me too, exactly. Ain't nothing these fools can do. Ain't nothing they can do. Ain't nothing they been able to tell. And think about that. It's almost like they have been trying to break us up. In some cases, some people have jumped ship. Few people have jumped ship to the other races. But and typically when they do, their offspring typically starts getting more attracted and coming back to us. Because they gave us the swag. They gave us the looks. They gave us certain things, you know what I'm saying? I know I'm talking about the dudes, but even all women, you know what I'm saying? Y'all got certain assets to y'all that other people don't got, you know what I'm saying? And we got certain assets to us that not everybody got either. So it's like the universe endowed us with certain beneficial things, which was gonna always ensure our genetic survival, because naturally, everybody want to fuck with us, and we want to fuck with us. We want to fuck with us so much, it don't even matter what, no matter who you put around us. We still want to fuck with us. They want to fuck with us. Everybody want to fuck with us. Okay, and that's something that I hold really, really dear to, not just the assets part, but just us in general. You know, the music, the style, the way we dress, the way we dance, the creativity, the words that we say, the rhyming, the freestyling. You know, to be able to freestyle, like that and come up with rhymes on a instant and tell a story and talk shit and be funny and witty in that shit, that takes a lot. And that's when you talk about coming, the reason, and I'm just getting a little deep, we're going to get back into this, natural assets too. Exactly. Natural. Boy, and I ain't gonna lie, I was at the mall earlier, and I'm telling you, I saw every kind of fake-ass Hispanic you can see up in that motherfucker mall. I'm like, why do y'all have so many phenotypes, man? There's so many of y'all in here looking like everything else but the real Mexicans when I'm in this bitch. But, like, as I'm walking around, I didn't really see anybody that I liked. And every time I would see a black girl, you know what I'm saying, walking down, I'm like, damn, a couple black girls. I'm like, you know, you got to get your look on. And, you know, assets just bouncing and moving. Some of them just dressed so, one of them damn near had her ass out with a skirt. I ain't mad at it. I'm looking, okay? So I was just sitting here looking at this, and then I looked over at some of these other folks, and I'm like, man, I'm not attracted to none of these other folks. And there was a couple of a few of the little Mexican chicks. They had some BBLs, and that looked nasty. They was all lopsided, weird looking and shit. I was like, yeah. See that y'all be trying, man. See, and then y'all be talking shit about our people getting BBLs. Here I'm sitting around walking around looking at all these natural black women walking around and being attracted to them. And I'm looking at y'all like, nigga, y'all done enhanced yourself and you look like that? Damn. You didn't. That's not an enhancement. I'm sorry. Just because it's bigger don't mean it's enhanced. Okay? But yeah, I was up at Irving. No, I was at Grapevine Mills Mall outside of Dallas. I was going to the little outlet mall trying to pick up some. Y'all, I was just telling y'all the other day, I be hitting up them outlets. I was like, man, I need to buy my mom and dad something for Christmas. Where can I get something at this outlet? But I ain't even gonna lie, like, them outlet malls be bullshit sometimes. Like, some of them sales with the same sales. I was like, I wanted to give me some sunglasses for both of them. They got some. My mom and dad got some cars recently, over the last year or so, and really nice ones too. And so I was like, for them, you know. And so, but no, they're real nice. One of them new Buick cars, SUV crossovers. The Buick, she loved it. She kept saying it's the Buick something preferred. My mom loves. She loved the whole. You got to make sure you throw the model and the whatever type in there. The Buick such and such preferred. I was like, okay, Mom. And my dad got him a little Alfa Romeo SUV. But anyway, and you know, they still live in the hood area. Like, my mom and dad are still hood niggas. And it's not like, well, I don't want to say hood niggas. What's up on that? I say they live in the hood. Like, my mom lives where my grandma and papa used to stay in that same house. And my dad lives in the house that he got back when he was young. From his mom. And you know what? Man, there's so many things. Like, so my dad told me the story about how he got a house. Let me tell y'all this, man. He said that my grandma and my grandpa had came up on some money off something. I can't remember. I forgot how they came up on some money. But they set aside $10,000 or something. At the time, homes were still cheap. $10,000 or something. I don't know. Long story short, they bought each and every one of their kids' houses. I forgot how they do it. I don't know if I can't remember if he said they made payments on them or whatever. But long story short, by the time he was older, he already had a house for him from his mom. I said, God damn. Now, it was on the east side in Oklahoma City, but don't get me wrong, back then, that was a new thing in a sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, when my granny and papa got their house, it was new in the area. You know what I'm saying? So, But long story short, they still stay over there. Like when I go over there, my dad still shops only black places like that. Actually, like last time I went down there, I'm gonna go down there this time this next week for Christmas. But when I went last time, he took me up to a place to get something to eat. And when we were sitting there to grab the food, he was talking about this store right now. He's like, yeah, that's where I buy all my shirts. I'm gonna probably be talking like that soon too. Watch. Yeah, that's where I buy all my shirts and things and whatever. And I sat there and I started thinking. I said, Dad, do you only shop at like black places? Hey, if they ain't black, I don't know if they got anything I want. Something like he said, if they ain't black, they ain't got nothing to want. I was like, oh shit. I was like, man, you don't even think about how pro-black your parents already might be and how much they already spend within their community. And people will lie and say we don't spend money amongst ourselves. Even myself, I had to think about the amount of money I spend in the black community. And I would sometimes chastise myself because they'll chastise you. Look, that ain't no black-owned toothpaste, nigga. You didn't get your orange juice from a black person. Y'all love going to Target, okay? But I think about it, like, for real, like, really, how much money do I spend on black people? Okay, well, first of all, he said, yeah, my grandparents came down and brought their house for $10K. What? In 1960, that would be around the same time. Yeah, in Florida, I wish my house was $10K. So it looks like that might have been a thing around that time. That's, there was some prices of homes like that. And that was in Florida, too. That's crazy. Because the people... My family's in Oklahoma. But people would say that, but like I started looking, people would say like we don't spend money amongst ourselves, but I started thinking, I was like, dude, I ain't even gonna lie to y'all. Your boy chiefs about one OZ every 5 days. So I probably spend about $400 to $500 a month in greenery, right? And I'm definitely spending that on my folks, right? And he probably getting it from another nigga. But I also get my hair done at least once a month. I should do twice a month. I just don't want to spend $300 a month because it's $125 for the retwist and the deep shampoo. And then I always throw $25 on for a tip. So $300 every a month for my hair, man. I feel like I'm a female at that point because that's y'all. Y'all be doing that. A woman at this point, my man. That's y'all. That's what y'all be doing. It's like, man, $300, and she be wondering why she don't be seeing me all the time. And that's why y'all be seeing me. It's not that I can't afford it. It's just that I just don't want to pay $300 a month. And then I'm bad at wrapping my hair. I don't wrap my hair at night. I do when I first get it done. Like right now, I will. But like after about the first week, I don't give a damn. I don't even think about it. And then my hair just get to looking crazy or whatever. But I do be spending my money black. I spend that black. I also go to certain black restaurants and eating places, food trucks and stuff throughout the month. Not a ton, but I might spend at least $100 or $200, on some black restaurants. Even on Uber Eats, I know some black-owned restaurants that I'll throw some money. Make sure I go to those sometimes. Order from those. I'm trying to think. There could be something else, and some of y'all too. Some of y'all have some of these same vices as well as other things, And if we do spend quite a bit in our, But let's keep. Oh, I was gonna read this. Let's get back. I'm already all off because I was talking about our folks. No excuses when you talk about good things about your folks. But it says right here, back to the Out of Africa theory. It says by the late 1980s, new discoveries, dating techniques were opening up the debate about the origins of our species. So what was it? They had to come out with some scientific things, like DNA, that people are still arguing with us about, and dating techniques that could be random as hell, right? On one side, scientists like me argued for a recent African origin, say 100,000 to 200,000 years ago, while a group known as the multi-regionalists, who were led by Milford Walpoff, I should look these people up. And Alan Thorne, you know what? We should look them up. Claimed Homo sapiens had existed for nearly 200,000 or 2,011 years. And actually, I thought, I would like to pull them up because they're multi-regionalists. So let's keep going.
Or in AI, it just basically pulled it from the article. But what's also funny is they show this as being the region, but they still put a 2 right there.
Yeah, so now this is like what I was telling y'all. Now it started off that video I showed you did not have that 1 here. They didn't have that. They started off the one in up there in the Caucasus Mountains, and they flowed their bitch asses on this way. Now they've kind of switched it up. They're like, well, actually, it's Africa. Then they came up to here. Then they went down to the Philippines because we got to explain why all these Filipino-looking motherfuckers is here. And then they also went up that way after the Europe thing as well. It's like they spread out always from here, emanating from that point. But that makes all that did basically, besides making white people be supreme and being the first, it gave them access to make us look like we the first and put us on the worst continent. But it also reveals who really created them. But they didn't mean to do that part. But then it goes up from that point. So these people be playing games.
Notice that too. Remember, that's that same area right there. But you know what's funny about that area? It's also the goddamn Caucasus Mountains.
Yeah.
If you let these people play you, they'll come up with whatever story they want to. Well, we first started here in the Caucasus Mountain region. Yeah, us or them, And then we went that way, and then we spread it this way. Yeah, that's probably what happened. You started there and went that way and this way, which is why this whole area is now a lot of y'all. But we were already here. Yeah, the original Europeans, without getting all deep into it, yes, the original people of Europe was melanated, the Moors, they ruled Spain and everywhere else before, whatever. Irish people from Ireland, the Scots were the Scotland people, whatever. But if you let these people play with you, they'll keep chasing up the story. Why did they come up with the out of Africa theory? Do you think they really believe it? Or do you think they needed a reason to get the people in America to believe it?
Yeah.
To make them believe, hey, this continent, which they've never had a continental census, they've never had, most countries don't even have a census still. But they want to tell you that 1.5 billion people live here in super poverty.
Like, think about that. How do you know how many people live there if everybody doesn't have a census, which has counted the people? Now you're telling me that y'all just going off of estimates. Okay. And I'm supposed to believe in Africans' estimate? These niggas lie about everything. These niggas exaggerate things to the fullest. Yes, nigga. We went from 300,000, now that's 1.5 billion here, nigga. Yes. And next year, that will be 10.9 million, nigga. Billion, my bad, billion. And if you bring up another larger number, nigga, we got a larger number waiting for your ass again, okay? We always gonna be larger. No, we ain't got no census records, okay? We passed this down orally. I just told you, didn't I? These niggas are stupid. Oh, shit, hold up.
Yet only 50 million or so, 48 million, whatever, live in America at the north. Now, there's a bunch in the south, too. They don't want to combine all the numbers. And there's more of us up here than they want to really admit. But if they make this continent sound like it has the most black people in the world on it, well, yeah, you'll start believing that. Well, shit. If all the black folks is over here and we just a few over here, that must be where we come from. No. First of all, I do not believe, like, they got the stats to say, like, they have stats where it's like 50 million orphans, are in 50 million orphans struggle all the time. If you don't have birth certificates, you don't have census records, these children are orphans, so they don't have parents or possibly even a home to live in. Who counted 50 million children? You know, who counted that?
Yeah, just think about it. They come up with these stats. Excuse me. Woo. Hitting hard. Excuse me. They come up with these stats. Nobody has a census record, birth certificate, a piece of paper counting anybody, or whatever. I don't know. You can't even go and find a roll call at every one of these goddamn orphanages or something. You know what I'm saying? But somehow y'all got 50 million. And my thing is, I swear they be just coming up. Now, don't get me wrong. They probably got a lot of orphans. Because them people is horrible. But do they have 50 million? Don't get me wrong. When I get a chance, I'm going to use these numbers against them, right? I'm going to bring it up in their face. Why y'all got 50 million orphans, nigga? Is y'all crazy? Y'all can't get nothing. The kids can't get nothing to eat? Y'all can't give them a home, man? That's crazy. You know, I'm definitely going to use it against them. But I feel like they exaggerate some of this shit in order to do these scams. Think about it. They some of the biggest scammers in the world, right? And we don't even think about how those commercials where you send 5 cents a day was probably a scam. It's probably a scam. They like, nigga, we was treating our kids like this anyway. So we just put it on camera and make you think something. But we always gonna treat them this way. You keep sending that 5 cents a day, nigga. It ain't gonna change the situation, I guarantee you, but it makes you feel good like you changed the situation. I have a little a magnet on my refrigerator of a little child that I send money to every year, and I know that they're doing better. There's less flies on them this year. Not less flies on them this year. Okay, let me get back to this. Oh, man. Oh, shit. Oh, hold up. What the hell is this?
Then these people will get you vulnerable, get you all, not vulnerable, but you get you all in your emotions to send money to these folks. Because you're like, oh my God, what an atrocity. But more than just seeing some stupid skull, whatever, I'm more interested in unearthing pyramids. You got people out there, like Mr. Mountain Beast, that finds these all the time.
Here is a video of an ancient pyramid being dug out of the jungle. Take a look. The sedimentary layer.
That's how much dirt was sitting there. Later on, he talks about it's over 6 feet of dirt that's covering up the pyramid structure. Now, these aren't found nowhere in these zones, right? They're really found right here in Mexico, in Central America, right below the South, where we were at too, okay? But they don't have it as any kind of origin story at all. You didn't find all these things you found in the mounds. None of that mitochondrial DNA dated back. None of these structures dated super far back or make you think why there's so many here versus over there. Y'all know they playing with this. Like I ain't got but 10 minutes. They be playing.
I gotta get back to making content. Excuse me, y'all. We way off in the weeds. Way off in the weeds. We supposed to be talking. How the hell did I get on the subject of where the world was starting? Nigga, we was over here talking about the goddamn Dred Scott case. I don't even know how I got onto that. to be honest with y'all. I think somebody said something and they got me onto that, which ain't a bad thing because again, it does kind of match up. Oh, you know what? I get it. I remember. It does match up because we're talking about the Dred Scott case. We're talking about some of the first times they're putting in legislation to have wording in there about you being African. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, and that wording was placed in there in this time frame, and it's important because at this time they was nowhere. They was less. It was another 100+ years before the whole out of Africa theory even talked about like that. So you got to wonder, why were they trying to throw this Africa thing on us then? They knew that they were trying to make us African. They had to find multiple ways to make us believe it. So all of these steps of definitions being changed in the 1800s, legislation being placed out there in the 1860s, to 1860, same thing with the last one. Treaties that were signed in 1866 simultaneously between all tribes through Albert Pike and the Masons, all including African language. And then eventually, in the late 1800s, you get the Dawes Rolls, all of a sudden labeling you as a freedman, which according to them technically defers you to being a slave, which technically to them somehow makes you African, but not necessarily. It really doesn't. Even just because it doesn't, it really doesn't. Because just because you're a slave, we know that doesn't mean you're African. You could be a slave by being a prisoner of war, and we can pull up the 1860 slave codes that show that from the Library of Congress. And it's like, man, when I really make this whole case about this whole, especially this out of Africa thing, or leading up to us, I don't know what I'm gonna call that particular, like, because that needs its own documentary. Like this whole thing specific to the Africanization of the Indian or some shit, but I got to make it sound better than some shit like that, because that's. The Africanization sounds like some shit Sonetta or some shit would do. I got to make it sound smooth, but that's what you get. Like the time frame of changes from when they started to try to call us Africans until all the way till they get to the modern times of the out of Africa theory, to DNA, to us fighting both now against the DNA, against the out of Africa theory, against the curriculum when it was placed in the schools, which was in the late 1900s, late 1980s, and all of this. So y'all see it, but always going back. Now we know kind of where it started in legislation and everything else, and why it started, which was to take us out of being Indians. So, and the propaganda just kind of goes in to help enforce the mindset that we are African. So if we go into a court system or something like that and try to sue or whatever the case may be, they can pretty much treat us as if we're not under their jurisdiction and blah, 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 if they want to. Now, in many cases, they're not doing that on every case. Like, I'm not going to sit there, like, they're not, every time you go in and try to sue, they're not trying to sit here and be like, oh, you're an African, get out of here, nigga. They're not doing that because it would be obvious, right? It would be too obvious. And also, they don't need to do it in cases of the court to, at least in many cases, like if your normal shit that you go in for, and they're not going to tell you just like blatantly, hey, it's because you're an African. They're going to give you some other excuse. So let's say what I'm trying to get to. Let's say if you go in there to fight for like a land patent, right? Now I'm just kind of making this up as I go along. But let's say the people on the other side that you're fighting, they're trying to come up with some strong case that they're going to utilize jurisdiction against you, but they're going to try to come up with some other story on why you losing this lawsuit. They're probably going to tell you something like, I don't know, some technicality on why you lose the lawsuit. I ain't finna try to come up with something, but but really in the background they may get rid of the case because of jurisdiction, or maybe they might settle out. Maybe some of the people know that they're gonna lose the case, and not with that wouldn't be about the jurisdiction. They wouldn't settle out if they knew they was gonna lose. Never mind. I meant they knew they was gonna win the case. then they wouldn't settle if they was going to win. So anyways, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, these people aren't using this kind of legislation so blatantly, basically what I'm trying to say, where everything you go in is like a jurisdiction question. But this is some legislation that is on the books. And it was more so used at its time, in my opinion. This case was used for at its time in order to separate the Indians, put a case on the book for the 1866 treaties to actually have some kind of case for the Africans not being citizens, as well as later on with the Dawes Rolls and Seminoles suing and everybody else and all that other stuff. By that time, they like, okay, these people kind of got it. You know, they think they Africans, whatever, some of them. Really, by then, they still didn't think it, or whatever, because that shit still didn't come until the 1980s. So anyway, it's a whole long timeline of events, but let's keep going with this and see what they would talk, because I forgot where we left off here.
Majority of 2 that says, no, we are not obligated as the state of Missouri to honor the laws of what was the Wisconsin Territory or the state of Illinois, where the Scots had been on free soil. We're not obligated to extend that kind of courtesy, and our laws dictate that they should be, in essence, re-enslaved. There is a lone dissenter, Justice Gamble, who says, not so fast. We have decades of a precedent here, and I, at least for the dissenting view, argue that we should follow precedent and they should be free. But he doesn't carry the day.
Gamble's point was, I think, as clear as a bell. He said, circumstances may have changed, but our principles shouldn't.
One thing I hate that people will do a lot in propaganda, that throw out propaganda, and you'll never hear me say phrases like this. I don't think I've ever said phrases like this. I can't think I've ever said it, unless I'm like looking. I may be looking at a thing and be like, it's very clear, but like he said, but they always say it's very clear and it's obvious. It's solidified. There's no question about it. Or these kind of phrases are propagandistic terms to put in your head. Like, what I'm about to say to you is 100% fact. Don't worry about it. Don't fact check me. Don't give a fuck. Just understand that I'm going to tell you it's so concrete because I'm telling you this shit right now. And I got to preface it by telling you how concrete it is. Okay? That's the type of shit that I hate. Just listen to it. So this is just for me to tell y'all, if you listen to people who are really telling you truth, they never really say a whole lot about that, unless sometimes it's like unless they're showing you something. Like, look, it's clear, man. Look at that pyramid right here. It's pretty clear as a pyramid or something. You know, it might say like, look at and show you. But when people just say it in conversation, propaganda.
You that we should follow precedent and they should be free, but he doesn't carry the day.
Gamble's point was, I think, as clear as a bell. He said, circumstances may have changed, but our principles shouldn't.
For the next part of Dred Scott's story, we go on to the federal.
He thought he
courts,
dropped the
ultimately
bomb.
The Supreme Court. But before we do that, it's time to start taking your calls. We're going to begin with a call from Joe watching us in Pittsburgh. Joe, you're on the air.
And you know what? As I was listening to this, because this is Cspan, they had a couple of little girls call in. One, she was in the 10th grade. She had a pretty elaborate question. And then they asked her what grade she was in. She said, like, I'm in the 10th grade. I said, if you don't get your propagandistic ass the fuck on out of here, this 10th grader don't know fucking thing, don't know a goddamn thing about Dred Scott. She was like, well, we were learning about this in class. I was like, get the hell out of here, man. This is what they do. They will incorporate children. They might put him on in an advocacy kind of role. They might slip him in there as a caller, so it looks like you educate the children, you know. And even the it's all to be in your head as you watch this C-SPAN shit. And this is what I just really hate, these little small things.
Question.
Yes, I'm interested in the 2 attorneys that defended Dred Scott, Montgomery Blair, which we know of the famous Burr House in D.C., and Roswell Field, who was from St. Louis.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to...
And another thing, too, I'm starting to think that a lot of these callers are propaganda. Like, people calling in on behalf. Because some of these questions, like, there's this one dude that calls in. We're going to just go through this, dude. Because there's this one dude that calls in, I'm a lawyer, I'm an attorney, practice, so, basically it's like everything I say is right now, and I know about the case, and he's just throwing out, but then he starts to usher in talking points, and it's just like, since I know the case, I know these talking points is kind of off, but the way he came in here, like, did you really call in with that shit, or were you just trying to be a call-in person to usher in more talking points on this C-SPAN motherfucking news? Like, you would think C-SPAN is just for real on the up and up. I remember back in the day, I thought if I was really watching C-SPAN and watching the actual, where they actually be doing the little, the votes for shit in the House and the Senate and shit like that, and all of the little hearings and shit, I thought I was really getting a whole lot, but a lot of this shit is theater. It really is goddamn theater. You got to go look at the motherfucking facts. These motherfuckers, they are theater. Okay, let's keep going.
Ask our guests to spend just a little time, because when we get to that part of the story, we'll spend more. But the Montgomery Blair being the more famous of the two, what can you tell us about him?
I want to point out quickly, Montgomery Blair is a Marylander, like Roger Taney, a former slaveholder who has a very different view ultimately of how Dred Scott should turn out.
So here they go. They're gonna try to go into the life of the damn judges and shit. But notice she pronounced his name as Taney. He would be Taney. She is not Taney. She almost looks a little bit tiny, but I'm telling you, a lot of times if you put a white tea folk in a certain light, in a building, and it can somewhat almost look like a little man of the nation, but she really ain't that. She a white lady.
When we get to the Supreme Court, it's a contest, Marylander against Marylander.
Next is Caliente, California, and Jim is watching us there. Hi, you're on the air, Jim.
Thank you for this series. Several questions. First of all, thanks specifically to the two guests there. You're doing very interesting. I'm a former retired attorney. And,
okay, here we go. My bad. I'm laughing. She said dark white maker.
First of all, thanks specifically to the two guests there. You're doing very, very interesting. I'm a former retired attorney, and last time I think I looked at Dred Scott was in law school about 50 years ago. But
you see how he did that? I'm a former attorney. Last time I looked at Dred Scott, 50 years ago in law school. To me, that's propagandistic. It's trying to throw out your credentials instead of sticking to the facts. I don't need to know who you are. I hate when people get up. Well, I'm a surgeon, so I can tell you that herbs they don't do nothing for you, nigga. What does a surgeon got to do with herbalist? You know what I'm saying? Well, you don't know shit about herbs, and so just because you're an attorney don't mean you know shit about this law. This particular case, you could be a goddamn attorney and went and learn family law. What the fuck that got to do with this Dred Scott case? Okay, but let's keep going.
Question is very, very interesting. I'm a former retired attorney, and last time I think I looked at Dred Scott was in law school about 50 years ago. But my question is this really the worst case the Supreme Court has decided?
Now, that's the one talking point. Again, when people repeat things, that's how you know it's propaganda. So when that's the first, this is the worst piece of legislation the Supreme Court has ever done, in my opinion. And there'll be another person, this has gone down in history as one of the worst cases that the Supreme Court has ever done. Oh, next person. This is one of the most infamous cases because there was so much of a issue with the case. Why are y'all all saying the same shit? Tell me about the case. Okay? I ain't seen nothing in there talking about it being... Why do y'all keep saying this? They want you to think this. This is what they want to harp on. That's propaganda. Brainwashing. Okay? You can't brainwash me, nigga. I'm unbrainwashable. Okay? But we'll keep going.
I think I looked at Dred Scott was in law school about 50 years ago. But my question is this really the worst case the Supreme Court has decided? I think I would have said Plessy versus Ferguson. just because it continued, the effect of it continued longer. Dred Scott died with the Civil War, fortunately. And also, and I don't know if any of you can answer this.
Notice how he tried to tie in the Civil War with the story. Again, another propagandist. I'm just a random guy. I think I looked at it about 50 years ago or something like that. I don't know, but I'm an attorney. So I think it was something about it was the worst legislation ever. It kind of had something to do with that Civil War. Like nigga just reading so you ain't got no other opinion than what everybody else has pretty much said. Yo, 50 years of being an attorney has not allowed you to look at the case and find anything different to say? Okay, well, let's keep on.
I don't believe you're doing Plessy in the series. You are doing Brown versus Board of Education, and if you know why you're not doing Plessy versus Ferguson, I'd be curious.
And you see how he tried to do that? He tried to make it look like he knew a lot of things, but he only talked about basically 3 different black cases that happened that had nothing to do with this particular case. To be honest, I'm going to have to go look into those cases. But it's just like he's trying to say, well, yeah, this is probably about as bad as, I guess it could have been bad as Plessy versus Ferguson, but it could have been about as good as such and such versus V such and such. But I forgot what the other one was. But I wouldn't say if it was so much like that. It's like you really didn't even just say that. You just said you just threw in talking points of other black cases, randomly compared them to each other without giving details, left it vague, and this is your professional opinion. Okay.
Well, a very simple answer to.
I don't know if any of you can answer this. I don't believe you're doing Plessy in the series. You are doing Brown versus Board of Education, and if you know why you're not doing Plessy versus Ferguson, I'd be curious. Thank you.
A very simple answer to that. We had 12 weeks, and
then his question was just, how come y'all are not, after he ushered in these very brainwashed talking points and saying that he's an attorney, so you would say, you go back and be like, I heard an attorney on the TV tell me. How you gonna tell me I ain't tell you the truth? He's a fucking attorney. I watched Cspan. They had an attorney tell me this. It was the worst legislation. It was, see how, because even I would have fell for it. Again, I used to watch C-SPAN, and this pisses me off. Because it pisses you off, because it's like, who in the fuck can you even believe on TV? Nobody. Nobody, of course. Nobody. I don't care how nice they dress up in a suit and make it look all corny and normal. Tonight on Channel 5. I don't care if they do all that extra shit. I don't give a fuck about all that shit. Okay? Give me the facts. Okay? Let me start ranting. Okay? But the shit pisses me off because that's exactly what they do. That's what they did. That's what he just did. He came in, acted like he's an attorney, ushered in his talking points, galvanized you with his credentials that you can't even check because he didn't give a name for you to go check. Yes, you can check my attorney website and validate that I'm a real attorney. This could be a random drug using nigga off the streets calling in saying, well, my attorney years 50 years ago. I'm literally telling y'all this like, well, you don't know. You don't know. Let me keep going. And then at the end, he just asked a question that has nothing to do with the case. When are y'all going to talk about Brown versus Education? Well, wait a minute, nigga. I thought you was asking a question about this case.
thousands of cases. So we, with the Constitution Center as our partners in this, really spent lots of time arguing over which cases would be our landmark cases, knowing that we couldn't do all. But already we're thinking about next year and maybe more cases to add to the list.
Well, first of all, let me tell y'all this. I've only been studying this Dred Scott case for about less than a week, maybe a week. But listen to what they're saying. It's not D-Rug Dilla. Yeah, but listen to what they're saying. They saying, well, yeah, and these people get paid and they're journalists. Well, I don't know if we'll have enough time this year to really fully go through each one of those legislative things. We were diving deep into the Brown versus Education, but I don't know if we would be able to get into the Plessy versus Ferguson. It's like, okay, really, y'all got teams. Y'all got teams and y'all get paid, nigga. I'm sitting here going through hella these, right? Hella, and for those who didn't see it on the screen, going through hella gas, right? chilling at home, getting paid by nobody, except for the appreciation my folks get. Getting paid by nobody, doing nothing, whatever. And I'm just interested in this case. And I studied more and knew more about this case in a goddamn week than what y'all talking about. And y'all say y'all still don't know if you're going to be able to get to it in a year, nigga. This is how you know, like, okay, really? I can't trust none of y'all. I can't. What the hell are y'all doing all day? I don't get it, man. Okay, let's keep going.
But was Plessy versus Ferguson perhaps more impactful in the long run?
Well, I mean, it sort of depends on your perspective and what you're talking about. In terms of impugning the reputation of the court, and I think the caller is absolutely right, by the way. Plessy versus Ferguson was an atrocious decision as well. But in terms of impacting the reputation of the court, I think Dred Scott did a great deal more damage.
Now, notice he didn't really say anything. Well, I'll answer. Yeah, well, Plessy versus Ferguson was actually worse because notice its impacts on the courts. But, you know, Scott's decision had a little bit more of an impact. Okay. Appreciate it. Appreciate the vagueness.
To the reputation of the court, in part because I think the expectation among most people is that the court was not going to be overtly political. Not that these cases aren't political at times, but that it wouldn't actually engage in politics. And what we see in Dred Scott is really a court reaching out and deciding a political question and deciding it wrong. Plessy versus Ferguson has its faults, and maybe when the next season comes around, we'll have an opportunity to talk about that because there's a lot to say about that decision as well. But I would stand pat on my claim that really Dred Scott is the most atrocious Supreme Court decision.
Martha, do you know the answer to this?
Again, gotta have that talk point. It was the most atrocious Supreme Court decision ever.
At least in general. Mary Pat on Twitter says there were 301 freedom case suits filed in Missouri. How many, or at least what percentage of them, were successful?
Oh, that's a very good question, and I don't know the answer. I should. But I will say that there are some dozens of cases brought on the very same terms that Scots bring their case that are, in fact, successful. There's almost every reason to think that they should succeed.
Yeah, the one case in particular, which was actually decided a couple years before Dred Scott's case came about, Rachel versus Walker, was one where there was a female slave that was taken by an army officer into free territory, and the court held that when that army officer took the slave to the free territory, that he forfeited that slave. So there was a clear precedent on the books in Missouri. It wasn't a lone case. There were many cases just like it. I think Mark is exactly right.
Welcome to Glenn watching.
I had to do it.
Michigan. You're up, Glenn.
Thank you all very much. My question is, there were a lot of white European groups, Italians, Jews, Irish Catholics, and so on, immigrating here at the time. And I was wondering, what exactly defined citizenship back then? I mean,
good question. Now, we looked up what a citizen meant in the dictionary and in the law dictionaries, both from the late 1700 period all the way up to 1900. And we noticed citizen went from meaning to be a free inhabitant of a city, which is just a city is just a dwelling of houses together and a bunch of people together. And then it went towards being an inhabitant under a municipality and a government of the United States, blah, 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 blah. So it's changed its meaning. But also still, yeah, how does one person become a citizen or a free inhabitant of a country or a city here without being, if an African, basically what they say, if Africans aren't citizens, how come the other ones are? Let's listen.
Did the Dred Scott case make it basically a skin color and ethnic group thing, or was there some kind of hard and fast rule, or what exactly was a citizen back then?
Thank you. Important question.
We get right to the $64,000 question. The U.S. Constitution is nearly silent on the question of who is a citizen. There's a hint in qualifications for office like the president that there must be something like a natural-born citizen in the United States. There certainly is an acknowledgement in the Constitution that one can become a naturalized citizen, as is the case for many of the immigrants that you referred to. And at the same time, there is an extraordinary hole, if you will, in our understandings of citizenship in the 19th century, and that turns precisely on the case of former slaves. They are no longer slaves, they're free people, but there is a spirited debate about whether or not they stand in shoes equivalent to those of white Americans during this period. And Dred Scott appears, and I say appears, to close the door on that.
So it doesn't really close the door on that. It's not that, I mean, it's that they're trying to say if they can stand in the shoes or whatever, but it really just goes towards the Africans. The Africans supposedly brought here are not citizens, and I ain't mad at that because a bunch of Negro Indians, a set of Negro Africans were already here. And as long as we're the ones that are the citizens, I don't really give a damn if they're not citizens, to be honest. I don't care how much ethnogenesis motherfuckers want to say nigga got up in here. They ain't in my line, so I don't give a damn. And if motherfuckers want to claim that part so close, so close. Now, don't get me wrong. If you find it in your tree, that's cool. I think that's fine. Don't get me wrong. If you find it in your tree, you good. But if you ain't find it in your tree, don't claim the story. And you know, it is what it is. But even then, a lot of your folks would probably still be from here. You probably just found one African, you know, or so. It's versus me. I found 22 people in my tree with Indian paperwork documented, you know, and I only got so many documented because my people went to Oklahoma. If it wasn't because of the Dawes Rolls, if a lot of other people got their people documented too, y'all just got to go look in the other rolls. But let's keep going.
Question. Well, in that light, William Hamilton on Facebook writes, the problem with Dred Scott was it opened the way to bring and maintain slaves in free states. It's an important principle, he writes. You shouldn't lose your rights by crossing a state border. But in the case of slavery, it creates serious problems. The Fugitive Slave Act already had caused huge issues.
No, he's exactly right. I mean, part of what Dred Scott did, the lower court decision, was to create a sort of bubble, a space in free territory where slavery could exist. And that was the basic tension, whether that was permissible. The Missouri Compromise.
Like, just think about this, man. I'm not going to play this whole thing. I listened to the whole thing. There's several points. I'm going to have to re-listen to it so that way we can, I don't want to make y'all sit through it because they really kind of boring. But they had a lot of talking points that's amazing to debunk. But you got to think about this. They talked for an hour and 32 minutes. In an hour and 32 minutes, 2 hours of a live stream with me, you'll be done seen and learn so much shit it'll make your head spin. But these people are paid, and these people, what I'm getting at, these people will talk so goddamn much about the topic without actually bringing up the documents and talking and just telling you what it says. That's all we really need to know is like what actually you can very well. I want to know what you think about it, but tell me what the hell it says, and let's read it exactly, and then let's discuss it. You know, if that's the case, let's point out certain things inside of it. These people are just kind of randomly talking about talking points, but then they're gonna tell you they ain't got enough time to talk about it fully. But they still got another hour left in this bitch. You know what I'm saying? What you mean you ain't got enough time, man? You gonna have to come back. Nigga, these people, and that just lets you know, like, these people will make up a whole lot of stuff. Because, again, everything they're talking about is not true. Because the whole, everything is predicated on him being a case. You know, we're going to go into this one because we
contested him
and listen to a little bit from this one, just to get a little bit more of a sentiment from some people. But, like, and because I want y'all to hear that we hear the same talking points, but as well as some of the things that they might add in as well. So let's see.
The National Constitution Center. So let's begin with the words of the Declaration. Jefferson said that he wasn't making them up out of thin air, but was channeling the thought of Aristotle and Cicero and John Locke and Sidney and other publicists of the time. So Jefferson was expressing an idea about natural rights theory that begins in the state of nature. The idea is that all human beings are born in the state of nature with certain rights that come from God or nature and not from government. And we can't alienate or surrender those rights when we form governments, even if we want to.
Now, that's being a natural born person, right? Which is why naturalization is a weird thing to me, bringing in an immigrant and making them become a person over here with, I guess it can make sense, giving them rights. Because don't get me wrong, like back in the day, before all this corruption and these people being as like they are, I'd have been a little bit more open to immigration. Like, all right, y'all can bring a few people over here, man. Y'all come over here, do a little business, It's all good, this, then, the third. But now we all to the point like, no, we see don't nobody give a fuck about us. They over here trying to just bullshit and take shit and whatever. Now I'm just like, yeah, I don't even give a damn. And fuck naturalization, all that.
And the preamble of the Constitution begins.
Now, we the people, of course, from the Constitution, builds on that natural rights theory, but represents an innovation of sorts, in particular by the great framework.
Let me get to the case. He does kind of bullshit for a moment.
Hypocrisy with regard to their own practices regarding slavery. We know that the framers made compromises.
Let's get to the laws and the man that would bring about this reckoning. As new states entered the Union, politicians tried to keep the peace between slave states and free states. And when the Missouri Territory sought statehood, Congress struck a bargain. Here's the author of Dred Scott and the Problem of Constitutional Evil.
My name is Mark A. Graber. The Missouri Compromise was passed in 1820. The deal was Missouri would come into a union, but all territories.
Let me get to the damn case. Slow ass folks.
Well, the reason it had to be argued twice had to do with a technical issue. So it was first argued in February 1856, and after the argument, the judges were deeply divided on the question of whether, in fact, the objection to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, of this federal courts, had been waived in the lower courts. And because they were divided 4-4, and one justice was uncertain. And as a result, they had the case re-argued in order to allow the justice to come to a conclusion on that very technical issue. And that made a big difference because the first argument was in February 1856.
And what happened between those two arguments?
The second argument was not until December 1856. And in between, we had the presidential election of 1856, which were opposition to slavery in the territory.
Politicians were saying, let the court.
Well, right now they're just trying to say it was a political thing. They tried to use the Dred Scott case as a political thing. They was like, hey, there's a election coming up, so we're not going to decide on the case. We're going to put it off. They're just kind of fluffing it up.
And then what the court looked like by the time Dred Scott's case arrived in 1856? Here's Mark.
The most important thing to know about the court is because of the Judiciary Act of 1837. 5 justices hailed from slave states, even though slave states only had about 1/3 of the population.
Just as it played a central role when new states were admitted to the Union, slavery had seeped into the politics of selecting Supreme Court justices. Now let's take a closer look at the...
Now, they kind of just glossed over that, but we saw those were on here earlier, where it's this right here that I found in 1909. It says, hey, the Supreme Court of the United States, let's start up here. The Dred Scott decision. Furiously as the sectional flames already raged, the factious or whatever pro-slavery men had to throw another flood of oil to intensify the heat. They so little understood the depth and intensity of the hostility to slavery in the North that they imagined they could stifle the opposition to them by securing from them the Supreme Court of the United States, a decision supporting their political heresies. And so in a sense, this is saying, hey, these people were looking to get something passed on a particular case about slavery. Come down here, it says, The Supreme Court of the United States had that great jurist, John Marshall, won a high place in the esteem of the people of the country. And all Americans were disposed to accept its decisions as the final word upon subject. So basically it's saying, hey, at a particular time, the United States, the public viewed the Supreme Court in pretty high esteem because they had people like John Marshall. I went to John Marshall High School. I need to look into him. People like John Marshall, who was, somebody that was favored. But it says right here, but during the decade before the war, however, the Supreme Court had deteriorated greatly. The reason why I'm saying it is because they just was talking about how some so-called slave state representatives or whatever just made their way into the courts. Well, they must have been one of these people right here they're talking about who were in the deteriorated Supreme Court. They said it deteriorated greatly in character and legal attainments of its members. There was not a man on the court who was held in high esteem as a lawyer or a jurist. So these people that they're talking about are not lawyers. They don't know nothing about law. It says, and nearly, if not all of the members were politicians. Okay. And she just said representatives were all of a sudden being on this from slave states coming into the Supreme Court. Right. But prior to that, the Supreme Court was handled by lawyers and jurists. It says from whom Jackson appointed in reward for partisan subserviency. They were politicians rather than lawyers. Look, I bet they wouldn't even let me call in to C-SPAN with some of this shit. If they had, I wish I would be watching C-SPAN, nigga, and they would talk about Dred Scott, nigga, live, nigga. I'd call in, nigga. I would tell them I have a different question. Yeah, my question is, did the Dred Scott case really have an impact on the future of African Americans? That would be my. Oh, that's your question? Okay, they're going to have like a little person that's going to, figure out what you're going at. And then when I get up there, I got this newspaper here that says during the decade before the war, they're going to hang up on my ass. But okay. But right here it says, these people were regarded of a legal fraternity. No, they were politicians rather than lawyers who were regarded from a legal fraternity. They were politicians. So basically it was a deteriorated court of people who were appointed by Jackson.
Dissenters in Dred Scott versus Sanford. First up, Benjamin Curtis. Curtis was nominated to the court by Millard Fillmore in 1851. Here's Earl again.
He was from a very prominent Massachusetts family. He went to Harvard Law School, practiced law, was chosen.
Jackson. Yes, the same president who nominated Roger Taney.
And he angled for the president.
As you heard the name, Taney.
A political party, that is. He cycled through the Jacksonian Democrats.
But let's get to the damn case.
That African Americans can never be.
Here it is.
Taney said Dred Scott would not be the most notorious decision of all time. Missouri and Missouri law says that he didn't become free by his sojourns. If that's all Taney said, Dred Scott would not be the most notorious decision of all time.
Dred Scott was the most notorious decision of all time. Okay, there that talking point go. Okay, let's keep going.
It would have been unfortunate for Dred Scott, but it would not have had broader consequences.
But of course, Taney had a lot more to say.
He says, first, that African Americans can never be citizens of the United States.
That's not what it says. As we see, these people be lying. It says a free Negro of the African race. Because think about this, y'all. If an African raced Negro cannot be a citizen, why would they be called an African American? Right? Makes no sense. Well, an African American cannot be a citizen. Well, they wouldn't put that in here because an American African wouldn't make sense in the phrase of citizen of the United States in America. Nigga, they just quit playing games with me. That's why they said in here the plaintiff having admitted from his demurrer in the plea of abatement that his ancestors were imported from Africa and sold as slaves is not a citizen. It doesn't say an African American. An African American sold as slaves. See, it wouldn't make sense unless they put in here if the plaintiff was an African American who even if you put it, you have to take out the word admit for it to make sense. It would have to say if an African American had his ancestors come from Africa, which that still wouldn't make sense, but still, you're talking about African Americans. But long story short, I just wanted to show that they keep adding in that phrase because they want to say, well, it's just politically correct or whatever. I don't know why they keep doing it. Well, we know why.
United States, including the incredibly notorious line about how white people at the time the Constitution was framed believed that black people had no rights which the white man was bound to respect.
Oh, now it's black people had no rights that the people wasn't. The word, they never called him a black man in here. It said Negro. They don't know what words to use. Are we African race? Are we Negroes? Are we black? Are we African Americans but we not citizens? Are we, what the hell are we? Colored? Everything but an Indian.
And he about how that African Americans can never be citizens of the United States, including the incredibly notorious line about how white people at the time the Constitution was framed believed that black people had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. And he purports to root that in the original understanding of the Constitution, and he talks about all the incredibly racist laws that not only southern states, but free states, and he goes out of his way to quote the laws of Massachusetts and Connecticut forbidding intermarriage and whatnot, to assert his very confident belief that free African Americans could never be considered citizens of the United States. And
boy, he keep going back and forth. We was African Americans, then we went black, then we went back to African Americans. He don't know what he want to use for us. He don't know what the hell to call us.
Nor full citizens of the states.
Exactly.
And the third argument that he makes, which is very tendentious, is that the territories clauses of the Constitution, which authorizes Congress to make all laws needful for the federal territories, only applies to the Northwest Ordinance. And he puts a lot of stress on the fact that it's the territory, not territories. And he says that after Congress legislated with regard to the Northwest Ordinance, it can't legislate more broadly with regard to deprived slave, and an argument about the constraints, pretty clause of the fifth of those arguments, but that's basically what Tommy argues.
But it gets a little more complicated. Here's Mark.
The actual holding is a bit controversial because it's very difficult to figure out what proposition actually got 5 votes. However, Justice Tawney's opinion was not simply labeled Justice Tawney's opinion, it was labeled the opinion of the court, so we can presume at least 4 other justices said this will do.
The justices had returned to their practice of issuing seriatim opinions, where each justice wrote his own opinion.
I'm just really wondering where they read this, because, I mean, when I'm still trying to figure this out, because, look, when you go to the National Archive records, and you type in the Dred Scott versus John F.A. Sanford, all right? Let's go back. Well, let me just search it. There's only so many documents to pull up. Now, don't get me wrong. I guess maybe I don't think it would be. There maybe there's some case or some documents in the and like some of them lawyer databases, I forget where they be like looking at shit. Maybe there's something there, but I was going through a lot of these. Like, here's the pleas, the filings, the demurrer, and these are all handwritten manuscripts. These are like handwritten shits. Arguments of the plaintiff, order to sustain the plaintiff of demurrer, opinion of the plaintiff's request for a new hearing. I went through almost all of these. I still got a few of these to go through. And then after that, you got the a memorial about Dred Scott going in. But from that point on, it's not no more of the Dred Scott shit up in here like that I seen. Let me click on a few pages going forward. Make sure I'm not tripping. Yeah, naturalization, birthright, citizenship, Kind of funny how that pulled up. Who was that? 1993 Domestic Policy, records of the Domestic Policy Council, Clinton administration. They came out during the Clinton administration. But yeah, I mean, I wanted y'all to just see also, like, when you look for records, because then you got to wonder, like, where are these niggas reading this shit that they even coming up with? Like, are they literally just like writing this down just randomly? Or like, I really want to know, where did you? Well, Justice did this and he did that, or like with that one white lady, it was easy. She was, we could easily tell she was coming up with the story. Well, they're young African American girls, and they had to. I can only imagine what they had to deal with, and they possibly had to be assaulted or blah blah blah. You can kind of tell, okay, you just making that shit up on the fly. When these niggas get to talking about certain things that they real, well, the case went from here and then all of a sudden it was here and there were 5 people. It was kind of hard to tell if it was 5 votes and this and that. What was you reading this? Like, what page said something? Yeah, as you can see, I ain't finding shit. What page in any of these documents was talking about X amount of votes and this and that and the third, nigga? Because I didn't read it. So what are they talking about? How do y'all come up with all this information without actually having some documents or sources with that information on it as well? Like, that means you just literally just coming up with the fluff.
And Justice Curtis argued in his dissent that parts of Tanya's opinion weren't even binding because they were beyond the scope of what the court had been asked to decide.
Tani spent a lot of ink arguing that the founders never intended for blacks to be a part of We the People or the all men in All Men Are Created Equal. He wrote that this language, quote, would seem to embrace the whole human family, and if they were used in a similar instrument at this day would be so understood. But it is too clear for dispute that the enslaved African race were not intended to be included and formed no part of the people who framed and adopted this declaration. For if the language...
So, see, they'll say something like that, and in some of the cases, yeah, I feel like, okay, then you read some of the story, but to be honest, I really feel like these people are reading other people's take of the story, because what I haven't read, even though I'm listening to shit now, like when I went to I went to the real place where you need to get the real shit, right? But you could probably go like here. Oh, man, the archive is down. Oh, man. I guess it's down. But you can really just go to the archive, type in Dred Scott, and look up more modern times of what they talk about, and then you just re-reporting you regurgitate what other people have said, and that's my only other thing I can give them. And those people would have just been making it up, and then it's still like, where did they get it, But
language, as understood in that day, would embrace them. The conduct of the distinguished men who framed the Declaration of Independence would have been utterly and flagrantly inconsistent with the principles they asserted, and instead of the sympathy of mankind to which they so confidently appealed, they would have deserved and received universal rebuke and reprobation.
Rebuke and reprobation, you say? Like how one contemporary response to the Declaration of Independence rhetorically asked, how is it that we hear the loudest yelps for liberty among the drivers of Negroes? Here's more from Tanya's opinion. Quote, yet the men who framed this declaration were great men, high in literary achievements, high in their sense of honor, and incapable of...
You know what? I want to find this real quick. Because what's crazy... Let's listen to this.
Story of
Scott married Harriet Robinson in a civil ceremony by...
Because what I want to find this for y'all, because what they try to say is that Dred Scott was fighting for his freedom all that time, which he wasn't, and he never got it. The court ruled against him based upon jurisdiction, and then eventually they say his master let him go free. Yeah, I'm gonna stick to this one. We're gonna watch a little bit more of this one. That other one, I don't remember I do remember listening to it yesterday. I don't remember as many things jumping out to me. So I remember many things jumping out to me about this one. I think they just a bunch of fluff over there. Same thing with it. These are a bunch of people that's on a bunch of fluff too. But it's just amazing the type of fluff that they throw in here and the talking points. And this is Cspan on top of that.
Her own owner, who was
It's a great question because Tawny does not come certainly out of any of the religious communities that we would associate with a critique of slavery. And
I don't care about that question. Let's go to the next
less
question.
than clear.
Sanford misspelled.
That's correct.
In the case. So that's just a little historical side note that is interesting. So who argued for Sanford?
So before the U.S. Supreme Court, we have Reverdy Johnson, who is.
I don't care. I'm gonna skip to certain questions because now I can kind of tell, when they start a question. So I'm gonna skip to certain questions.
Going to arguments that
as free person.
Next question comes from Larry in Englewood, Colorado. Hi, Larry. You're on.
Hello, very serious. I wondered if the Scots lived as freed persons during this litigation period. Heard a little something about they were let out and wondered who the funds went to and just what their status was during this prolonged period of time.
The Scots are slaves. They are enslaved people throughout this period, and it's not unusual.
They were slaves. They were enslaved people throughout this period. Remember, y'all. Remember, the dude only had them in bind, detained or whatever you want to call it, kidnapped in a sense for 6 hours. They was never slaves. Okay, these little. Where did you read this, lady? Because it literally says that they were not slaves. The dude never dressed in the newspaper. They said there was never proven that he was a slave. The only person that brought up that he was a slave was the defendant in his way to try to defend. Well, I only did that to them because they were some slaves and they was my slaves. But that don't mean. So they're saying here, well, yeah, they were slaves during this entire time. Even in the case, it said they was only imprisoned by this dude for 6 hours. So why would he be suing them for imprisoning them for 6 hours if he still has them in prison right now? Just think about that. Why would he be suing for them imprisoning him for 6 hours if he's still in prison by them right now during the entire case? These people are fucking morons, and this is Cspan.
In a city like St. Louis, even absent the ongoing freedom suit, it's not unusual for enslaved people to be what was called hired out seasonally or for year-long contracts. Owners took advantage of enslaved people's labor in many ways, sometimes using them in their own households. But as you've heard, the Emersons have no direct need for the labor of the Scots, but they look forward to or anticipate the income that's generated by their labor.
Exactly, because these people are crazy, and what they're trying to make up an excuse of saying why was he working in Missouri, and they're trying to say he was owned by somebody named Emerson, and Emerson hired him out to go do work in Missouri to take advantages of the wages. Is just trying to make an excuse like all the money's going back to Emerson instead of him or whatever. But in his case, he's suing for $3,000. So what? Is he suing for $3,000 so he can get that back to his slave master? So he went to court to sue for the lost wages that his slave master was supposed to get. It doesn't make any sense. You see, none of it makes sense.
The remarkable twists in this story is that the Scots will labor and earn, some say, as much as $1,000 during the course of the litigation. That fund is held and finally turned over to the family when the Scots receive their freedom.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen to that. Hold on.
Need for the labor of the Scots, but they look forward to or anticipate the income that's generated by their labor. One of the remarkable twists in this story is that the Scots will labor and earn, some say, as much as $1,000 during the course of the litigation. That fund is held and finally turned over to the family when the Scots.
Tell me, does this make sense? With this, lady, lady, am there, and this and ass. Tell me, does this make sense? This lady just said that the Scott family, for whatever reason, was working as slaves during this case, and during this case made about $1,000 in slave work that they couldn't touch. And then that money was turned over to them once they gained their freedom. So you mean to tell me that the master sat there and calculated how much he was going to pay them and saved it for them, knowing he wasn't going to pay them, but then when the case finished, he paid them the wages that he thought he was going to pay them? Even though he shouldn't have paid them nothing because they slaves? And what the fuck sense does that make? Especially if he's in here fighting for his freedom. If he's getting paid, is he really... You see the craziness. And where did you read that? Where did you read that this nigga worked and got $1,000? I ain't read it. I haven't read it. Now don't get me wrong. There's newspapers like there's this one newspaper I haven't read yet. I know it's gonna be a bunch of bullshit, and I'm gonna show you. It came out in 1886, so it's years after the Dred Scott, and this whole entire page is about Dred Scott. And I was like, that's a lot of information when this man didn't really have much information in that suit. And I bet, I hadn't started reading a lot of it, but I bet this is going into a lot of fluff and BS, and these people might be regurgitating some of this fluff and BS that ain't got nothing to do with it. But I don't know. I have to read through this one because this one was long, and I was like, yeah, because especially when I saw the photograph or with the drawings, I was like, yeah, dude, I don't know about that. But what's funny is they threw hoop earrings on her. Indians had hoop earrings as well as pearl earrings. They was always depicted with that. That's funny. And Elijah, the eldest daughter. But y'all know what's funny about this? The daughters were infants. The daughters were infants. Why do they got a drawing of the daughter like this? Does that look like a motherfucking infant? Does that look like an infant? How about this daughter over here? Does that look like an infant? Lizzie Scott from a picture taken at 20. Why? Wait a minute. It could be possible. 1857, they were infants. 67, 77. Possibly so. I would love to actually see the picture versus this drawing, but they said this was taken from her 20. John Madison's surviving grandson. I ain't never even seen that. Yeah. I really details of the trial. I'm gonna have to read this. I might start reading it tomorrow. To be honest, and to be honest, I don't really need to. Reading it is only gonna help to likely prove where they possibly got their propaganda from, because anything in here has nothing to do with what's in this goddamn case. You know what I'm saying? And if all this shit where she's talking about these people were slaves and they was hiding out with their daughters and this and that from hiding and all that, even if it's in here, we know that is contradictory completely to what's in the case. So technically, I don't need to read the shit, man. But for me, I'd hate to not read it. So let's keep listening, though.
Receive their freedom.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Irene Mary's.
He said, what? Indians were depicted with hoop earrings when they said 100 times she's African American. Exactly. Because because you got to think, too, they don't know these little nuances and cues. And not, a lot of people don't, you know what I'm saying? So when they drawing these photographs and stuff or these little depictions and shit, they don't know what kind of, they don't really know like our real culture that has been literally passed down, like we talked about earlier, from generation to generation. The things we keep doing, gold and jewels in our teeth. You had I think it was the Temuco Indians or some of them other Indians that was putting golds and jewels in a lot of stones like amethyst or some other kind of stone, jade or something in their teeth. You know, niggas was trying to shine. And they were like, ugh, I can only imagine it, but they would like drill a hole almost to make like a little indentation to put it in there. Just saying it and thinking about somebody drilling a hole in my tooth made me feel some kind of way. But yeah, no, a lot of our stuff, has been continued through time, and they don't know it, so they end up making mistakes. That's why it's important to know a lot of the little things about a lot of these things, as well as the big things, because when we go back through these histories, what we're trying to do is catch people in lies, right? And when you're trying to catch people in lies, you got to listen to the bullshit. They're going to throw some truth in there. It's just like I tell people I always like the news. The news will lie to you all day. Now, just because they lied to you doesn't mean they didn't tell you the truth that the weather is going to be whatever the weather is. Didn't mean they didn't tell you the truth that something happened on 23rd Street earlier today. Doesn't mean that they didn't tell you the truth about some of the other stories. But they still going to lie to you at some point. Like people try to make it seem like you can't do two things at the, you know what I'm saying, with the same news media. Yeah, that's the point, purpose. And so it's the same thing when you go through this history. They're going to come up with these stories. It's going to sound kind of believable. But it's up to you to know these little nuances and small things. Like, if I was just listening to this, and I listened to the last story about it, and I went and read a book about it from current 1900s, and then I read some newspaper clippings from the 1900s, I would possibly be like, you can't tell me I didn't research about this case. I've researched. I've done what I needed to do, and I've researched, and I'm good, right? But just because you've done research don't mean you did the right research, right? Everything I just told you would not tell you what that case said exactly. You know what I'm saying? Likely. In most cases, it's going to likely be a bunch of bullshit. Like when I went and looked at all of these newspaper clippings that I pulled up about it, out of all these newspaper clippings about the case, this was probably the most closest to explaining the case and the terms of anything as possible. One of them, okay? One. And another one that was pretty important was this one too. I will say that too. The rest of them only had little small things. Actually, that was a carryover from that last one. The rest of them had little small things that they would say here and there that it made me be like, okay, that right there, or that right there, or this right there, or whatever, So that's just really what we have to do, and just really kind of pick these niggas apart. Well, let's keep going.
It's Calvin Chafee, and so now Ms. Emerson, now Ms. Chafee. She finally relents at the end of the litigation, having won, and is willing to transfer title to the Blow family, but only on the condition that she be given those proceeds, which I had read was in the range of about $750. But she did request the money, so that says something about.
I think they were in piastra, and so I don't know what it was 1,000 piastra.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Separate funds is hell.
My bad. I was trying to read what you said. Looking at John Ross and how petition to revoke any removal actually became the list of something. Yeah, Ross has made it on my radar, and he should be. I likely will be looking. He probably will be more on my radar. I was looking a lot more into the Choctaw and Chickasaw tribe, like the agency letters for them, and a lot of their history. But I do know Ross and the Cherokees, and and it's not that I'm not Cherokee. I got some Cherokee also in me, or at least Cherokee Nation. What tribe of the Cherokee Nation? I need to figure that out too. But no, yeah, the Rosses would have been up there. He would have been part of them same people that signed them treaties in the 1866 that did a lot of damage.
And finally turned over to the family when the Scots received their freedom.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Irene marries Calvin Chafee, and so now Ms. Emerson, now Ms. Chafee. She finally relents at the end of the litigation, having won, and is willing to transfer title to the Blow family, but only on the condition that she be given those proceeds, which I had read was in the range of about $750. But she did request
freedom.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
funds is held and finally turned over to the family when the Scotts received their freedom.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Irene marries Calvin Chafee, and so now Ms. Emerson, now Miss Chafee. She finally relents at the end of the litigation, having won, and is willing to transfer title to the Blow family, but only on the condition that she be given those proceeds, which I had read was in the range of about $700.
I still don't even understand. What do you mean by her getting those proceeds? Either way, let's keep going.
$50.
They confused right there.
But she did request the money, so that says something about.
I think they were in piastra, and so I don't know what it was 1,000 piastra.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Preet in Novi, Michigan. You're on the air.
Hello. I just want to say that during his stay at Fort Snelling, Scott married Harriet Robinson in a civil ceremony by her own owner, who was Justice of the Peace. The ceremony would have been unnecessary if
Hold on. Listen to this.
That's exactly right.
Preet in Novi, Michigan. You're on the air.
Hello. I just want to say that during his stay at Fort Snelling, Scott married Harriet Robinson in a civil ceremony by her own owner, who was Justice of the Peace. The ceremony would have been unnecessary if Dred Scott were a slave, as slave marriages had no recognition in the law. Also in 1837, the Army ordered Emerson to Jefferson Brock's military post, which was south of St. Louis, Missouri. And when Emerson left, he left Scott and his wife at Fort Snelling, where he leased their services out for profit. And by doing that in a free state, he was effectively bringing the institution of slavery into a free state, which was a direct violation of the Missouri Compromise, the Northwood Ordinance, and the Wisconsin Enabling Act.
That was a 10th grader, y'all. That was a 10th grader. I want you to understand that she couldn't even say the word compromise. She said compromise. Yet she had a very elaborate talking points. One, trying to usher in the talking point that when Dred Scott supposedly married Harriet, he married her as a slave under this slave owner, which, again, none of these people said they were slaves. They was held by this man for 6 hours. The fuck you mean he was her slave and he married her under the slavery, under the what? Nigga, what? Okay. Where did you read this from, 10th grader? And not only did you read it, it was so important to a 10th grader that you watching C-SPAN to call in about the bitch. Not only is that a 10th grader watching C-SPAN about a Dred Scott case, nigga, the fuck kind of debate nerd is this? You know what I mean? It ain't one. It is somebody who was given talking points. You can hear a baby in the background. This lady don't give a goddamn. She was told to call in with this talking point because somebody had to call in just like the other person with something about how can we get onto the topic of his marriage was an illegal marriage, and it wasn't recognized by the court, so these people wasn't really married like that. We just need to throw that talking point because slaves can't be married. So we need to toss that in there. That's all that is. That's all it is. So let's listen to her again. A 10th grader.
Dred Scott, Fort Snelling.
That's exactly right.
Preet in Novi, Michigan. You're on the air.
Hello. I just want to say that during his stay at Fort Snelling, Scott married Harriet Robinson in a civil ceremony by her own owner, who was Justice of the Peace. The ceremony would have been unnecessary if Dred Scott were a slave, as slave marriages had no recognition in the law. Also in 1837, the Army ordered Emerson to Jefferson Brock's military post, which was south of St. Louis, Missouri. And when Emerson left, he left Scott and his wife at Fort Snelling, where he leased their services out for profit. And by doing that in a free state, he was effectively bringing the institution of slavery into a free state, which was a direct violation of the Missouri Compromise, the Northwood Ordinance, and the Wisconsin Enabling Act.
So can you tell me how come you know so much of the detail of this case, the legal detail?
Oh, I'm taking AP US History, and I already read my textbook, that's why.
You read it?
Can you tell me why you know so much about this little girl? Oh, you're a little girl? I didn't know. I just was wondering. I just wanted to ask this. I didn't know you was a little girl. I was just wondering. These people are fucking crazy, dude. They put it in your face, dude. Like, when I say this is theater, this is pure theater. And I can't believe it, man. It really annoys the hell out of me because it's like you can't even trust the government. And you should know that. You can't trust the government media. Yeah. Of course, of course you can't trust the government media. You can't trust the government. What the fuck am I? What the fuck did I think? You know, but it makes me think. What did I think when I was younger? You know, in my 20s. Well, to be honest with you, and I roll this up and go on a quick tangent. To be honest with you, I'll tell you how my journey kind of started. I used to watch, you know, like everybody else. I used to watch a bunch of reruns on TV and random shit about random shit, you know what I'm saying? Frasier and Martin and Living Single or At Nighttime, you know what I'm saying? Before you go to sleep. I used to watch all the Family Guy and everything, Simpsons. I had all the little DVD seasons and shit back in the day. But at some point I got tired of all that shit. I was working, and I also used to listen to it. I still listen to music. But in my headphones, I would listen to music sometime, the radio, and I got tired of hearing the same thing. That's one thing about me. I get tired of the same thing over and over again. And so I used to be a technician. I was like looking for something else to start to listen to. And I started looking. I was like, you know what? Let me look at that talk radio. Around the same time I was looking up this talk radio, NPR is who I ended up finding. I used to listen to the Diane Rames show. This is the Diane Rames show, and I am Diane Rames. Y'all know the lady with the fucked up voice. She probably ain't here no more. That's fucked up. But I used to listen to her, little Diane Rames, and Neil deGrasse with his bullshit ass Star Hour, whatever the fuck, and all that shit. I used to listen to all that shit. And so, like, I got excited at the time when I was listening to it because I really thought I had a grasp on things because I started at the same time watching documentaries like war and other documentaries. And, like, at some point, I would be watching documentaries, and then I listen to NPR, and they'd be talking about what I had watched in documentaries. So I really thought I had a grasp on things. I was like, oh, shit. This is like real world shit, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so I really started getting into shit, like, after that, and really started finding things. And, like, I really was, like, listening to a lot of NPR when I was a technician. And I would love to listen to that shit today and call in on them bitch-ass niggas, to be honest with you, now that I think about it. They'd ban my ass from calling in. I'd have to call in from blocked numbers on their ass and change my voice up. But anyway, so to get on to it, like, the reason why I'm just getting into why I got into, like, at some point, I was like, okay, let me watch Cspan, because if I want to know the real, I got to be listening to what they actually are saying in the government. And on Cspan and CNN and not CNN. I got away from CNNs and shit. That's why I went to C-SPAN. Things that were more like I realized that the reporters sitting at the desk were not going out and actually getting the news and giving it to me. So I was like, okay, wait a minute. Let me go to the people who are actually on scene, which typically, you know, C-SPAN would have people there, or they would be debating in certain places or whatever the case, right? And so I would be watching this shit, and that's what. So you make your steps down, and you really think, but they've literally covered every media base until you get there, whether it be radio, visual, TV, cable, newspapers, whatever. Like when they say Americans don't realize how much they're propagandized, because they make it really look good and make it really look official. And it's really kind of like, I can't be mad at people for, that's why I was like, I can't really be mad if somebody said that they researched something and stuff. They probably could have, you know what I mean? And people just, they just not reaching far back. We just don't know where to go for the proper now. Now, once you've gotten into your idea of the steps and you realize, oh, I need primary sources, I need documents from the time, I need to know what they said at the time, then you kind of hitting it on every nail on the head. Because now you're, as far as research, now every time you look at something, you're really looking at it from the proper perspective, versus anything else that could have been manipulated afterwards. So let's keep going. But yeah, just to throw in, 10th grader coming in here with talking points, talking about what I was taking AP, whatever. Okay, whatever. Really? Okay.
An enabling act.
So can you tell me how come you know so much of the detail of this case, the legal detail?
I'm taking AP US History, and I already read my textbook. That's why.
You read ahead of the text. That's great. So what year are you in school?
Oh, I'm in 10th grade.
10th grade. Thank you so much for being part of our program. We appreciate your questions and the detail of it.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Great question and comment.
And any more to add for her?
Well, I would just simply say those were the big questions. It was whether creating that bubble of slavery in free territory violated federal law. And that was the question that was wrestled with by the court. And ultimately, it's in Dred Scott where Justice Taney says, in effect, no, because the federal law that created that free territory was unconstitutional.
So there were essentially four aspects of this case that the Supreme Court reviewed. The first was the plea in abatement subject to appellate review? Put that into terms that the public can understand.
We'll go to the next question.
A citizen, not the Scots.
In the territories. This gets down to the question of judicial courts.
But you have to be a citizen of a state. Diversity jurisdiction in a federal court, right? Diversity being a circumstance under which a citizen of one state sues a citizen of another state. When that happens, you have access to federal courts, but you have to be a citizen of a state. And the question is whether or not the Scots are citizens of the state of Missouri.
Question number 3 of the 4 considered by the court. Did Congress have the power to enact the Missouri Compromise and prohibit slavery in the territories? This gets down to the question of judicial review.
Well, that's the heart of the question. Congress has authority to regulate in the territories. That much is clear under the Constitution. The question is, does the sort of regulation that Congress is empowered to do include
the compromise aspect? They were going
to say, talk about how they're going to
and know what the outcome in Dred Scott is going to be, and he's leaning on these justices. Now, again, today, this
what of those the most significant for the case. So the 1856 election and the beginning of the rise of the Whig Party, and also President Buchanan wanting to be able to make political hay of this as the country started.
They're just talking about the political aspect of it.
Of the news of the decision are able to, in a sense, judge for themselves what the court has done.
Well, the decision runs 255 pages, so obviously we can only pick a very short excerpt for you to give you a flavor of it. Here is
now listen to this.
Themselves what the court has done.
Well, the decision runs 255 pages, so obviously we can only pick a very short excerpt for you to give you a flavor of it. Here.
Now, they said the decision went 255 pages. And I'm going to just show y'all real fast that I'm still, unless they reading something that I'm just not reading. Again, when you type in the Dred Scott versus F.H. Sanford, these are going to be the documents that you're going to get. And inside of here was 40 pages. And inside of the few of these that I was reading was like 10 pages or less. So I don't know what 255-page thing of just the decision or whatever she just said. Because here you got the filings, the pleas, the proceedings, completed proceedings, all these other things. And it wasn't nothing that long. So I really don't know. Let me just Google real quick this. because that's one thing I don't think I did do. I mean, the first thing you would do is go to government sources, and from that government source, the main thing you would think is this is where that's how I got to the National Archive of Records. It's that link right there. View all pages in the National Archive catalog. So I mean, I got my link directly from the government, which took me to a government site, and then here's a transcript of that part of it. And it goes just about that long right here. It's not that long. I guess it's decently long, but it ain't 255 pages long. As you can see, it's about the 40 pages of a transcript, because it's a 40-page thing that it was in that document above. So yeah, that looks about right, because that's about the 40. That's the 40. It was 40 pages in that document. So this is the only document, and here's one thing: a complete list of documents. Okay, let me click on that. Milestone documents. Now this is other stuff. Lead resolution. So this is other things. This ain't even Declaration of Independence. This other thing. This is actually going back to something else. And to be honest, we need to read all this. We need to know what the Treaty of Paris is. I need to read it verbatim from the damn thing. Virginia Plan, all this shit, to be honest. Federal Judiciary Act, Bill of Rights. I ain't never read the Bill of Rights that I could think of. If I did in school, it was probably to pass some test, and I don't remember a goddamn thing about it. Alien and sedition or whatever. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose that page. Let me keep that up. Well, let me see real quick. But that was those, so that was all the government documents. So anything else I would be looking at, to me, anything else they would be looking for should be outside of that. But I was thinking, okay, maybe they got something like this, where it's like an actual thing with every single minute of everything of the case. I don't think the case would have lasted that long, though, because the dude was only in bondage for 6 hours. So this case was really something about a dude just being in bondage for 6 hours, or being kidnapped for 6 hours, him and his family. I don't think, why would you need 255 pages to figure out whether or not, whatever. So let's see how long this goes. Okay, now this is pretty long. Justia Supreme Court. I would be interested in reading this. I want to know what is for. I consider the passage to this law to have been an assertion of the first Congress of the United States to prohibit slavery within this part of the United States, blah, 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 blah. On the second day, the first Congress passed the Act of the Deed of North Secession. Whether or not this is 255 pages, I don't know about all that, but it's a decent amount of, it's definitely a decent amount. It's definitely a lot. What is this? Primary harm in the decision that was later, NATO was notified for it by the 13th, 14th Amendment. At least that's what they're saying. I'd hate to read this. It's typing on a screen. You know what I'm saying? And that's my thing. How do I know what they changed? I'd hate to read this whole thing, and I don't even know where did you get this? I'd rather read it from the document if I'm going to read this much. And I can see certain things, but notice it's like certain things that were on the actual, which are the first things popping up that was on the government website. A freed Negro of the African race whose ancestors were brought, so that's verbatim. And that other thing should be down here then too. The changeable appearance somewhere. It should be somewhere. What is that? The decision, therefore, whatever. It's going into the decision. It's probably somewhere here. I'll probably control F and find it. But every citizen right to take. I'm just curious what the rest of the plaintiff himself acquired no file of freedom. Blah blah blah. Dred Scott talking a turn. He is a Negro of African descent. His ancestors were pure African blood. We read that. That was actually in the case. So part of this is from that 40 pages, because that, and I remember these dates and these the way this is broken down. but I read it directly from the handwritten. So to be honest, unless they've added things, let me see here. What's this hyperlink? Page 60 US. So I guess it's not a real link. I'm just wondering what else new they have besides what I read in that motherfucking handwritten case. Opinions and dissents. I'm a go. I likely will go through some of this. I'm gonna have to like skim through it. I'll probably now see that took me somewhere. I couldn't go to the pages that it said like this is like page 60 US 395. I guess I'm thinking that was gonna be, but they all say page 60 US 398 US 395 US 398. That a page of something, or maybe this is the page that's in here. Maybe this is what this is. This is a particular page, and this is so. The pages aren't that long if this is the page, and this is a particular page. So, the decision was decided on being in the cabinet and pleading, but I don't even think this is even in the. Hold on. No, it's still in the same thing. Sought in war alliances, treaties. Treaties have been negotiated. Hold on. What are they talking about right here? And the freedom was constantly being acknowledged from the time of the first immigration to the English colonies to present day by the different governments which succeeded each other. Treaties have been negotiated with them and their alliance sought for in war. Let me see what they're talking about. Right of dominion, the situation, ultimate right of dominion. Let's start from right here. The situation of this population was altogether unlike that of the Indian race. I knew that they had to be talking about the Indians. And they say, this now, I want to read this. I want to read this. Okay, nigga might have to read this. The situation of this population was and you look, y'all saw how long this was. I could have stopped anywhere, right? I was going up and down. This bitch is kind of long. And nigga did stop in the right spot. The situation of this population was altogether unlike that of the Indian race. The latter, it is true, formed no part of the colonial communities, meaning that at one point the Indians formed no part of the colonial communities and never amalgamated with them in social connections or in government. That's funny because they'll tell you we all mixed. Everybody mixed. They said y'all wasn't even really in social connections or in government. But it says, but although they were uncivilized, they were yet a free and independent people, associated together in nations or tribes and governed by their own laws. Many of these political communities were situated in territories to which the white race claimed the ultimate right of dominion. Let's keep reading. It says, but that claim was acknowledged to be subject to the right of the Indians to occupy it as long as they thought proper. Hold on. Let me read that again. Many of these political communities were situated in territories to which the white race claimed the ultimate right of dominion, but that claim of the ultimate right of dominion was acknowledged to be subject to the right of the Indians to occupy it as long as they thought proper. And neither the English nor colonial governments claimed or exercised any dominion over the tribe or nation by whom it was occupied, nor the right of the possession of the territory until the tribe or nation consented or to cede it. Now, you know what? Before we get further, I want to look up what ceding your land means. Ideally, not ideally, but initially we would think, we would just think, we're giving it up, giving it away, whatever. It's not longer yours. What does cede mean? Let's look. We're going to look both in the dictionary and in the law dictionary. One from 1896 and then one from 1797, right? And y'all know why. What does seed mean? And if this doesn't come on, I'm going to have to refresh. Let's refresh that. Oh, yeah, damn it. Damn it. We can't look it up because the damn archives is offline. And that's where all my law books and all my motherfucking... that's where all my shit is. I mean, I could look up... Let's look up the etymology of it on the etymology dictionary. But, you know, it's not really everything, you know. Seed. I like to get that hard copy, that scanned hard copy, I should say, because it's not really hard. Seed, to yield, give away, from French, cedere, or directly from Latin to cedere, to yield, give place, to give up some right of property, originally to go from, proceed, leave, go away. The original sense of the in English is now archaic. The transitive meaning yield or formally surrender something to another is from 1754. The sense, evolution, whatever. So it's pretty much to give up is what they're trying to say. But let's see if I can find real quick. Let's say 1797 or 1797 dictionary. Let's just see if it'll pull something out. It's not in the archives. Encyclopedia Britannica. Nah, like shit like that, you're gonna really just mostly find that in the archive, man. Several notable dictionaries. Is this? Yeah. I'm not even. Well, you got to pay $450 for this. That's an old dictionary. 1797. Motherfucker, $450. This is why I hit up the archives. And we don't understand like that. We don't really understand the gravity of the access of shit we have access to just within the archives. It would cost us $450 to get this, and I could just sit here and pull this bitch up on the archives in seconds. And other books worth thousands of dollars, that are ain't old as fuck. I wouldn't say ancient. That's it's something we take for granted. No, not really. I don't want to say we don't take it for granted. We be up in there. Oh yeah, I was trying to read. I was like, what was I doing? Let me finish reading this. So to see this. So not unlike the Indians again, right? These Indian government, like, why are they even talking about the Indians in this motherfucking case, right? Now they making a comparison in talking about citizenship, but again, this case is. I mean, they talking about jurisdiction and citizenship, so I guess if somebody's just trying to throw out a story about the Indians real quick to make a case, I guess, it is what it is, but it's like, why are you talking about these people? This will be your other Negro race, but let's look. These Indian governments were regarded and treated as foreign governments, as much so as if an ocean had separated the red man from the white, and their freedom has constantly been acknowledged. This is where I believe the importance of birthright citizenship and why it was applied to Indians who were not taxed. Indians who were taxed at the time would have technically already been citizens. Okay? And in that, they would have already been whatever. But the bulk of the Indians at the time were not taxed. And in that, what was I trying to say? They were not taxed. And so birthright citizenship gave them citizenship to the United States government, putting them under their jurisdiction. These Indian governments were, because they were regarded as foreign governments, and it makes sense, right? Sorry, I was looking at. I'm trying to order me a little food. I hope y'all don't mind. Hold on one quick. I know it's late as hell, and I'm gonna have to go outside and pick it up too. But you know what? If it's warm, is it warm outside? I stay like where I could really walk out. 59 degrees. Do I want to walk outside, put some clothes on, walk all the way through these people that's partying and shit to go grab me some food? Or do I want to Uber Eats it? I'm probably going to Uber Eats it, y'all. And plus, I can keep talking to y'all for a little bit longer. So, yeah, I'm going to keep reading this. Let me just quickly make my little selection real quick. I'm about to eat late as hell, man. I don't like eating late like this, to be honest with you, because, like, you feel some kind of way in the morning. You know, your stomach feels weird. You know, I can truly see why you ain't supposed to eat at night. But I will say, if you eat something healthy at night, it's not as bad. What I'm about to eat is not going to be healthy. I can tell you that shit right now. Well, you know what? This ain't that bad. It's a little rotisserie chicken bowl. It ain't that bad, actually. Rice, guacamole, and all this other shit up in there. So, yeah, it really ain't that bad. And let me give a good tip on a Saturday night, because nigga be mad at you. You make them go through all... Man, they be blocking off the streets. Yeah, you know what? Let me just wait. I'm going to wait. I'm gonna finish up with y'all, and then I'm going to just go walk and get it, because... Here now, like in Deep Ellum, it's a big party city. I mean, party area of the city next to downtown. And there's a lot of people that always be causing problems out there here and there and whatever. So, like, now they be blocking off way more streets than they block off. So I was just thinking, like, it's going to be hell trying to get a person to Uber Eats down in this bitch on a Saturday night. On any other night, Friday night is almost as bad too. Any other night is not that bad. But Saturday night, no, they blocking off streets. It's people everywhere, cars everywhere, all kind of crazy shit. So let's finish reading this part. And now give me some food at some point. It says, and treated as government and separated by the white man. Okay. And their freedom has constantly been acknowledged from the time of the first immigration to the English colonies to the present day. So that means if an Indian went into those colonies when they were starting over to the right, they were still considered free. Don't get me wrong, there were some slaves, but many of them were still considered free. It says, by the different governments which succeeded each other. Treaties have been negotiated with them, and their alliance sought for in war. And the people who compose these Indian political communities have always been treated as foreigners not living under our government. It is true that the course of events has brought the Indian tribes within the limits of the United States under the subjection, to the white T race. And it has been found necessary for their sake as well as our own to regard them as in a state of pupillage. Let me see what that is. Kind of have an idea. State of being a pupil or a student. Really? To regard them as the state of pupillage, of being students? Fuck y'all. And to legislate to a certain extent over them and the territory they occupy. So really thinking about it, think about that. This is in a case law or in a case that they're talking about this. They're saying they regard us as pupillage. Now, how many times have people said they regard us as minors? And they have to legislate over us, right? That would be saying the same thing. That's pretty crazy. And it says, and to legislate to a certain extent, notice that wording, over them in the territory they occupy, because to a certain extent, because they still are free persons under their own government and laws. but they still look at them. The American government is looking at them as the U.S. as a little brother in a sense, a pupil, a minor, not even a little brother, more so like a child. But they may, without doubt, like the subjects of any other foreign government, be naturalized by the authority of Congress and become citizens of a state and of the United States. And if an individual should leave his nation or tribe and take up his abode among the YT population, he would be entitled to all the rights and privileges which would belong to an immigrant with an E from any other foreign people. We proceed to examine the case of the proceedings. The words "the people of the United States" and "citizens" are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to the Republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct of the government. So I'm not going to continue to read that tonight, but I'm going to read this. At first I was like, man, I ain't finna read this shit, man. This ain't no real shit, man. Where the documents? But I don't like to read stuff that's just on a screen, man. But this is pretty interesting. This is pretty damn interesting. So I'm gonna have to read it. It's gonna take a minute. It's pretty long, but yeah, I'm pretty much done, y'all, for the night. As y'all know, I was already talking about getting something to eat. But to be honest with you, I'm now all of a sudden starting to be lazy. Not really lazy, but I'm thinking I just go in there and just pan fry me up some salmon and throw it in some Alfredo pasta real fast. I can do that in about 20 minutes. And it's going to take 20-some minutes just for them to make my shit. And then they got to go walk and get it. I got to get dressed. It's 12 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to do that, but I also don't feel like cooking. That's why I was going to Uber Eats it, but I don't want to make nobody Uber Eat through this crazy Saturday shit. So I'm probably about to, I don't know, probably about to cook, to be honest with you. Probably about to cook, man, because something about getting dressed and walking all the way down, it ain't even that way. It's probably like an 8-minute walk, 8 to 9 minute walk, if that, you know. And then 8-9 minutes back. That's a lot of time. That's like 20 minutes. And 12-something at night, man. Walking through people and shit. I could get something from somewhere closer. That's some closer shit. The place I was going to get something. But there's some place closer, but they shit ain't that good. But we'll see what I get, man. But I appreciate y'all being on here tonight. I'm still going to be on this Dred Scott case. I need to make some content and do that. I'll probably do a little bit of that, but yeah, other than that, I'm going to definitely be on this Dred Scott case a little bit further. As I can see, like, the universe really sent me this way for a reason. I was like, why did I end up on this damn case and whatever? But the more I look into it, now you got Indians talking about Indians, treaties, citizenship, all this other shit, and this kind of leads right into this birthright citizenship thing with, which is what's the major topic right now in Congress. So this is really cool, man. This is going to be a cool little journey to go down this little rabbit hole, man. So thank you, Uncle, for always being here. Thank all of y'all for always being here. And thank you for supporting. And thank you also always being a supporter, Uncle, Crew Out, all the folks that's up in here. Who else is left up in here? Nikki's still up in here. Frank up in here. Regal's still up in here. And some other folks that I know y'all. Gus up in here. What's up, Gus? K5, everybody up in here, man. Appreciate y'all. I'm gonna let y'all go and scroll up and see a bunch of girls on here. Y'all know it be girls on the motherfucking live streams on Saturday nights and late night. You know they can't sleep on the weekends. You know, especially throughout the night. So the girls, y'all know y'all be on there thirst trapping. Not all of y'all. Some of y'all be on here thirst trapping. I be like, man, I ain't never seen this many things on the damn Like throughout the rest of the day, you know what I'm saying? It ain't nothing but debates and shit when you go through your little feeds for your For You and other little random shit. But Saturday night, oh, it's trap night. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna let y'all get the trap night. I'm about to give me some food. Y'all have a good one. Peace. Peace to you.